Chapter 11-19. Lu Yin grabbed the cultivator and smiled. Brother, you know a lot. Let's go together. The cultivator's lips twitched. No, I have something to do. I'll be leaving first. Can I ask you a question? How do we leave the monument realm? Lu Yin was curious. The cultivator replied, there are two types of steals. One allows you to enter and the other allows you to leave. You just need to find the steal that allows you to leave. Lu Yin was stunned, but then he thought of something and looked at Xiao Bai. If you can't enter, does that mean that you can leave? The two girls looked at each other and nodded. Why didn't you tell me? Lu Yin gritted his teeth. We forgot, the two girls replied crisply. Lu Yin wanted to beat them up. Actually, there are quite a few of those steals in the monument realm. I'll be leaving first, see you later. The cultivator laughed dryly and hurriedly ran out of the restaurant, afraid that Lu Yin would stop him. Lu Yin watched him leave and was a little displeased. Why was he in such a hurry? Wait, this guy was in such a hurry. Was he trying to find something good? He looked at Xiao Bai and Xiao He looked back at him. Their gazes met and they understood. They stood up and chased after the cultivator. Qianzhou wasn't looking for anything good. He just wanted to get rid of Lu Yin. He felt that nothing good would come out of being with Lu Yin, and if he remembered correctly, this guy had just been chased by Second Method from the Hall of Honor. Qianzhou didn't want to be seen as an accomplice. Qianzhou looked around. This was a city, and since it was a city, there had to be a city lord. City lords were usually the ones with the highest cultivations. Qianzhou was excited to see if he could find any techniques or battle techniques. He felt the thrill of peeping, and he was even peeping openly. To the cultivators who had entered the monument realm, this place was a place where they could peep. No matter what the remnant spiritual force was doing, as long as they didn't make any noise, they could watch openly, even if they were peeping on bathing. Bathing? Qianzhou paused and slowly turned around with a wretched expression on his face. He looked around and saw a brothel. He gulped and licked his lips before walking over. Behind him, Lu Yin and the other two hid, and they all saw Qianzhou's expression. This guy was definitely up to something. Just as he was about to give chase, he caught a glimpse of something gray from the corner of his eye. He reacted quickly and grabbed onto Xiao Bai. In front of him, a child's figure was passing by. Xiao Bai and Xiao He jumped in fright, their faces pale. Lu Yin was shocked as well. He couldn't make a sound here, and he couldn't touch the remaining spiritual force either. Otherwise, he didn't know what the consequences would be. In the distance, Qianzhou had already entered a brothel. When Lu Yin saw this, a strange expression appeared on his face. What was this guy doing in a brothel? There were many stone monuments that entered the monument inner world. The moment the Star Tower contest started, there were many whirlpools in the sea. Naturally, there were many cultivators that entered the monument inner world. For example, Tai Yuanjun had entered the monolith world and very pragmatically went to the City Lord Manor. Other than him, there were quite a few other cultivators in the City Lord Manor. They were all looking at the City Lord sitting in the main hall, seemingly discussing something with his subordinates. They were all waiting for the City Lord to start cultivating. They didn't believe that they wouldn't cultivate for a day. Perhaps because it was still midnight in the city, there weren't many people on the streets. Lu Yin brought Xiao He and Xiao Bai to stand outside the brothel and watch. There were many female and male figures in the brothel, and there was even someone who was clearly a courtesan standing at the entrance to send people off. Qianzhou came out not long later with a gloomy expression. It was pointless to peek at the spiritual force as he couldn't see anything. The moment he saw Qianzhou's expression, Lu Yin knew what he was doing. Bringing Xiao Bai and Xiao He with him was a complete waste of time. Lu Yin also thought of the City Lord Manor, so he brought Xiao Bai and Xiao He to find the tallest building. Within the manor, the City Lord who had been discussing matters with his subordinates dismissed them and walked to his room to rest. Tai Yuanjun and more than 10 other cultivators were watching him sleep in the room. Actually, to these spiritual force remnants, Tai Yuanjun and the rest were considered ghosts. Lu Yin arrived with Xiao Bai and Xiao He. He saw Tai Yuanjun, but he ignored him and looked at the City Lord who was sleeping. Tai Yuanjun felt uncomfortable when he saw Lu Yin, so he stood to the side and looked at the City Lord. It was a strange feeling, as if he was watching an immersive video. It was a wonderful feeling. Lu Yin didn't know what era the people in the monolith realm were from when they were alive, or why there were remnants of their spiritual force that kept repeating the past. Perhaps it was related to a progenitor. A progenitor could create a world, and the talisman progenitor was a world within a world. It wasn't impossible for him to create this world. What Lu Yin found strange was that these cultivators were all crowded in the city lord's bedroom, as if they were waiting for something. The remnant essences in the monolith world kept repeating the events of the past. Was something interesting going to happen here? At that moment someone poked Lu Yin from behind. Lu Yin looked over and saw a woman pointing to the side. Lu Yin was puzzled. The woman frowned and pulled Lu Yin to the side before rolling her eyes at him. Lu Yin pursed his lips. Since he was here to peek, why did he have to come to the side? Across from him, Tai Yuanjun was also pulled to the side by a man. He was unhappy, but he didn't do anything. It was obvious that he knew about the situation in the monolith realm. After a while, Lu Yin suddenly looked outside the bedroom where a figure had appeared. These spiritual force remnants didn't have rune lines, so he couldn't see them ahead of time. A figure quietly opened the bedroom door and stepped through space to appear in front of the city lord. A sword appeared in his hand and he stabbed out. This was an assassination attempt. The other cultivators stared at the scene excitedly and Lu Yin looked over as well. The city lord suddenly stood up and pointed at the sword with his index and middle fingers. He spun the sword, twisting it and breaking it apart. The sword shattered into pieces, and the city lord's finger pierced through the void and struck the assassin. He then swept out with his index finger, causing a gust of wind to sweep past and cut through the roof. Following that, a huge ravine appeared in the sky. The city lord's finger had split the sky apart. Lu Yin's scalp went numb. Even though he couldn't see the rune lines, he could feel the terrifying power of that finger. It definitely surpassed a power level of 300,000 or even 400,000. That finger had been very strange and it should have been a battle technique. These people were probably here to see that finger battle technique. After killing the assassin, many figures rushed into the bedroom. Lu Yin and the rest hurriedly stood in a corner, afraid that they would bump into those figures. The city lord gave some orders and the assassin's corpse was dragged away before he went back to rest. The spectating cultivators left one by one, as there was nothing else worth their attention here. Of course, there were also those who stayed behind to learn that battle technique. Tai Yuanjun glanced at Lu Yin and left as well. Lu Yin also left with Xiao Bai and Xiao He. After leaving the city lord's mansion, he looked up at the sky. That finger battle technique was very powerful, but it didn't attract him. He had the dream finger and had learned the finger tap before, so there was no need for him to learn such a battle technique. The cultivators who left the mansion all headed in the same direction. Lu Yin's heart skipped a beat and he followed. Tai Yuanjun did the same. These cultivators definitely knew more about the monolith world than they did, and they would be able to see many things if they followed them. As they walked along the streets, more figures suddenly appeared. It was probably morning. There were many gray figures with no facial features. They moved around like ghosts and Xiao Bai was scared. Lu Yin patted them and followed the cultivators closely. Among the cultivators, the girl who had pulled him away turned around and glared at him, gesturing for him to leave. Lu Yin smiled and continued to follow. The girl was flustered and turned to leave. The cultivators arrived at a large mansion with a huge plaza where many people were sparring with each other. The cultivators searched all the way until they finally reached the innermost layer of the mansion, where a figure was cultivating and continuously displaying battle techniques. The cultivators were very interested and stared at him excitedly. Lu Yin shook his head as these battle techniques were meaningless to him. He brought Xiao Bai and Xiao He out of the mansion and onto the streets, where they saw the cultivator who had led them in at the beginning. The cultivator hadn't expected to meet Lu Yin's group here, and after a moment of surprise he nodded and quickened his pace. The monolith world was very large and outside of the city, there was a considerable area. Many cultivators entered the monolith world to explore and peek at the remnant spiritual force cultivation. It was very useful and some even managed to learn something. Lu Yin also learned quite a bit, but those battle techniques were useless to him. Xiao Bai and Xiao He were afraid of ghosts and didn't dare to speak. Just like that, Lu Yin's group stayed in the monolith world for half a month. They didn't learn anything useful, but they did meet many familiar faces and they even met the crying lady once. However, the crying lady didn't dare to make a move against him here. Lu Yin was very wary of the crying lady. She had broken through to the Enlighter realm, so she definitely hadn't revealed all of her techniques. He hadn't forgotten that the Hall of Honor had secret techniques and there might be more than one. It's so boring. Lu Yin, let's go out, Xiao Bai complained. Xiaohei pulled on Lu Yin's hand and looked at him with tears in his eyes. Lu Yin nodded. I want to go out too. Let's look for stone tablets. Didn't you say that there were many? Why haven't we seen any in half a month? Xiaobai's eyes darted around. We don't have any, but someone else might. Lu Yin understood. Got it. Over the next 2 days, Lu Yin's group focused on searching for cultivators with stone tablets. Such cultivators were easy to find as they couldn't carry cosmic rings in the mountain and sea realm, so everything had to be carried on one's back. In the name of searching for stone tablets, the trio robbed several groups of cultivators, and they managed to snatch no less than 5 stone tablets. They then tossed them away and continued their search. Xiaobai carried a large mountain sea pouch that contained their gains from the past few days, and her face was full of smiles. Xiaohei also carried a mountain sea pouch and was extremely happy. Behind the trio was another stone tablet that had been tossed away. Come Xiaobai. Let me see what we've gained from the past few days, Lu Yin said happily. Xiaobai and Xiaohei stared at Lu Yin warily. No, it's mine. Lu Yin was stunned. It's ours. Right? Xiaobai shouted. Lu Yin was speechless. That's too much. We got it together. Lying. Xiaobai was stubborn. Xiaohei blocked Xiaobai's path and glared at Lu Yin as if Lu Yin was a thief. Thank you for your support, brothers. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 11:20. Lu Yin slapped his forehead in exasperation. Can't we just rob happily? He had just finished speaking when he turned to look to the side where a cultivator had poked his head out to look around. When the cultivator saw Lu Yin look over, he smiled in a flattering manner and then turned to leave. Lu Yin chased after him and patted his shoulder. Bro, what a coincidence. How many times has it been? The cultivator was Qianzhou, and he had not expected to run into Lu Yin's group either. I was just passing by. Sorry to disturb you three, but I'll leave now, Qianzhou hurriedly said as he glanced at the Shanhai pouch on Xiaobai's back. If he remembered correctly, these three had nothing at the start, but now they had so many things. There were no treasures in the monolith realm, so these three had definitely stolen from others. Lu Yin grabbed Qianzhou's shoulder. Bro, what's wrong? The cultivator's voice was dry. Qianzhou. Xiaohei was surprised. You want a beating? Xiaobai clenched her fists. Then let's do it. Qianzhou opened his mouth. It's not that. It's Qianzhou. You want a beating, right? Xiaohei asked. Xiaobai was eager to try. Beat him up. Qianzhou wanted to cry as he could not beat these two girls. At this moment, the inner monolith world suddenly went through great changes. The city in the distance instantly became dilapidated and the sky and earth changed. This was especially so for the sky, which had cracked open. Countless figures flew into the sky and rushed towards the city. Many figures in the city also rushed towards the figures in the sky. At the same time, the area around Lu Yin's group was filled with people fighting. They were all shocked that the monolith realm had changed at this moment. The monolith realm had an endless cycle of events that happened on a certain day or during a certain period of time. After a certain period of time, the repeated events would change, and they had not expected that it would happen now. At this moment, a shout came from the distance. A few cultivators had not dodged in time and had come into contact with the remnant spiritual force. They had attracted the spiritual force's attention and had been killed. Lu Yin grabbed Qianzhou and retreated, but an attack landed and pierced the ground. Qianzhou's face paled. The attack had come from the sky, and it was the aftermath of a battle. Although it was just an aftershock, its power definitely surpassed that of an enlighter. Lu Yin's face grew solemn as he looked up at the sky. This was a reappearance of an ancient war, and it was most likely a war to attack this city. They saw the city lord again. He used a strange finger battle technique to tear open the sky, but in less than 3 breaths of time his body was torn apart by a human figure. This human figure's physical strength was so strong that it made one's hair stand on end. He rampaged through the sky, and the shock waves of his strength were visible to the naked eye. Lu Yin hurriedly grabbed Qianzhou and retreated. Xiaobai and Little Black were very fast, so Lu Yin did not need to worry about them. Behind him, in front of him, there were figures fighting and killing in all directions. These silhouettes were all gray, and it was impossible to tell which side they belonged to. However, the way these silhouettes attacked the city made people feel strange. There was an indescribable strangeness, jerkiness, and disgust. It's the Neo-Human Alliance, Qianzhou muttered to himself in fear. Lu Yin was shocked. What did you say? Neo-Human Alliance? Qianzhou nodded. These silhouettes attacking the city are all corpse kings. Look at their attacks. When Qianzhou said this, Lu Yin realized that these silhouettes were indeed attacking in the same way as the corpse kings that he had seen before. They rampaged and roared, and some of them paused in place for a moment before suddenly becoming incomparably terrifying. They had probably transformed into corpse kings. This was an ancient war, and the monolith realm was within the mountain sea realm. That meant that the fifth mainland still had progenitors when this war had occurred. The Daoist sect had not been destroyed, and the sixth mainland had not completely invaded the fifth mainland. Had the Neo-Human Alliance already existed at that time? Hadn't the Neo-Human Alliance been born later than the Seven Courts? No, that wasn't right. Lu Yin suddenly recalled the scarlet stone tablet with vertical eyes that he had seen in the Six-Fingered Tribe's ancestral land. That stone tablet had been incomparably ancient, and there were ancient words written on it. If the Neo-Human Alliance had been born later than the Seven Courts, then it would be impossible for it to have been written in that language. Lu Yin had guessed that the Neo-Human Alliance might have been born much earlier than the Seven Courts, or it might not have been called the Neo-Human Alliance before. The entire city had been reduced to ruins, and Lu Yin and Qianzhou were constantly trying to avoid being touched by these silhouettes. Within the city, many people had been discovered and instantly died at the hands of the remaining spiritual essence gods. More people are coming from afar, Xiaobai whispered. Lu Yin turned around and saw many gray silhouettes tearing through the air towards them. One of them raised a hand and used a battle technique that shocked Lu Yin, the Sky Beast Claw. Lu Yin had not used the Sky Beast Claw in a very long time, and he knew that it was not an ordinary battle technique. Otherwise, there would not have been any traces of it on the ancient warship that he had seen in Stargazing Deck. However, the battle technique's power was still somewhat weak to the current Lu Yin. He had almost forgotten about the existence of this battle technique, and he had not expected to see it in this monolith realm. The silhouette's Sky Beast Claw looked the same as Lu Yin's, but the moment he saw it, the roar of an ancient beast rang out in Lu Yin's ears. This roar was much stronger than the one he had used, and it was as if a giant beast from ancient times had stepped onto the river of time to descend with its claw. This claw pierced through heaven and earth and tore apart the silhouette that had instantly killed the city lord. Qianzhou's face paled and his legs felt like they were floating. Lu Yin's eyes were burning as he stared at the Sky Beast Claw. Was this battle technique really that powerful? The Sky Beast Claw had completely engulfed all of the attacking corpse kings. Following closely behind the Sky Beast Claw were various other battle techniques, all of which were peerlessly powerful. Some seemed even stronger than the Sky Beast Claw, and the shockwaves from each technique forced Lu Yin and Qianzhou to retreat. Fortunately, they had been at the edge of the city from the very beginning, or else they would not have known where to run to. Astral art! Blackie exclaimed. Countless gray spheres circled in the sky, covering the entire city and even the sky. These were serious art stars and they were the same gray color as the silhouettes. Lu Yin was shocked. There were probably thousands of these stars. What the hell was going on? This kind of attack could not be withstood even by the heavens, let alone the city. Why would such an attack be unleashed within the city? It was not just the serious art. The Sky Beast Claw and the other battle techniques that had been unleashed later were all powerful enough to destroy the heavens. However, they could only destroy part of the city and not the entire city. This was definitely not an ordinary city. Lu Yin grabbed Qianzhou and kept avoiding the various gray silhouettes as they rushed out of the city. In another direction, Daoist had also rushed out and saw Lu Yin grabbing Qianzhou with Xiaobai and Blackie by his side. Daoist's expression changed as he distanced himself from Lu Yin. He did not want to be implicated by Lu Yin. Lu Yin had wanted to greet Daoist, but when he saw Daoist running away, he was a little unhappy. He brought Qianzhou, Blackie and Xiaobai to chase after Daoist. Daoist looked back and was stunned when he saw Lu Yin chasing after him. Then he kept signaling Lu Yin with his eyes to stay away. Lu Yin raised his hand to greet Daoist. Daoist was furious. This bastard. Qianzhou also wanted to curse at Lu Yin, but he did not dare to. Big brother, let me down. I can walk on my own. Lu Yin replied, where can an explorer like you hide? Follow me obediently or don't blame me if you die. Qianzhou grew anxious. Big brother. Call me seventh bro. Seventh bro let me down. I'm very fast. Faster than those two girls? Qianzhou glanced at Blackie and Xiaobai and thought about it. About the same. Lu Yin was astonished and sized up Qianzhou. You're faster than those two girls? Qianzhou nodded seriously. Lu Yin released his grip. Good luck. At this moment, countless gray attacks descended from the sky like meteors, completely submerging the ruined city. Lu Yin subconsciously wanted to grab Qianzhou to avoid the attacks, but Qianzhou's legs moved in a strange manner. Looked like he was walking backwards, but his body was actually moving forward. The void rippled, and it gave the illusion that he was moving in the opposite direction. Lu Yin was shocked. What kind of battle technique was this? Qianzhou had not been lying and his speed was not any slower than Xiaobai's. This was reverse step, and he had been lucky enough to obtain it from an auction house when he had been surrounded. He had used reverse step to escape many dangerous situations, and this time was no exception. Lu Yin was very curious about Qianzhou's reverse step, but he did not have the time to look at it. In the sky, all sorts of strange attacks swept through the city, and another group of figures descended. Lu Yin did not know where so many corpse kings had come from. One of the corpse kings landed in front of Lu Yin and the rest. Tai Yishan was startled and hurriedly dodged to the side, almost hitting him. The corpse king stood up and roared in place. Its voice was very loud and even the void rippled. However, this was only a remnant spiritual force playback and there was no sound. Lu Yin and the rest dodged as well, but the moment they did so, the void split open, and an indescribably strange finger descended and shattered the corpse king into pieces. Qianzhou's face paled and his legs moved even further apart. Lu Yin stared at the finger and his eyes narrowed. That was the dream finger. There was no mistaking it. That feeling was definitely the dream finger. He had cultivated for more than 12 years and had come to the Neoverse from the Outerverse. He had seen countless battle techniques and there were many finger techniques as well, but he had never seen the dream finger before. Sometimes he would secretly investigate whether the dream finger was related to his past, but there had been no news. He had not expected to see it in the monolith realm. Lu Yin stared at the void behind him, wanting to know who had used the dream finger. However, the void closed and he could not see anything. Lu Yin stood in a daze and stared at the void that had closed. As long as he could find out the identity of the person who had used the dream finger, he would be able to come into contact with the person's past and uncover the mystery of his missing memories. After much difficulty, they managed to escape the city. When they looked back, they saw that the entire city had been reduced to ruins. Countless gray figures were fleeing in all directions. Those were ordinary people, but they had all disappeared under the various attacks. This battle had happened in ancient times and those people had long since died. Outside the city, there were also a few cultivators who were in a sorry state. There were also some cultivators who had been left behind in the city forever. Blackie tugged at Lu Yin's clothes and he looked in the direction she was pointing. He saw the crying lady and Qiushi. There were many experts gathered here, but the 10 arbiters were nowhere to be seen. Qiushi saw Lu Yin, but her expression was calm as she continued to look into the city. Thank you. For the rest of my life, only for you drunken snow warm Facebook friend 57262245 I believe you. Jing'a. Thank you for your support, brothers. All I can do is write as much as I can while ensuring the quality. Thank you for your support, brothers. Thank you. Chapter 1121. At this moment, the more intense the battle in the city was, the more likely it was that a powerful battle technique had appeared. All of the cultivators watched the battlefield with fervent gazes, watching the battle techniques displayed by the figures. They would not leave immediately, and they would do their best to stay in the monument realm and learn as many battle techniques as they could, even if the effects were very low. The battle in the city lasted for an entire day, and during that time battle techniques were as numerous as the stars in the sky. There were even secret techniques amongst them. However, the secret techniques were not very attractive to them since they could not be learned. One day later, the entire city changed once more and the battle restarted. The city lord was torn to shreds and the sky beast claw descended. The cultivators outside the city watched intently. Lu Yin saw the dream finger shatter the corpse king. He tried his best to see the person behind the finger, but he was too far away. After some thought, he whispered to Blackie and Xiaobai, "You guys stay here and don't go anywhere. I'm going to take a look in the city." Blackie was confused. What are you going to do? Lu Yin's expression was complicated. to see some of the truth. He then leapt into the city. On the other side, Lei Nu and Qiushi also rushed into the city. Only experts at their level dared to enter the city to observe, as they were confident that they could avoid the battle's shockwaves. The other cultivators could only envy them. Even Tai Yishan did not dare to enter. This was the monument realm and he could not see any rune lines. His strength had been greatly reduced and he did not want to risk entering the city. Lu Yin entered the city and easily avoided the battle's shockwaves. He arrived at the spot where the dream finger had shattered the corpse king and waited quietly. He had to see the person behind the void. Besides him, there were a few other cultivators in the city. Tai Yuanjun endured the first day of battle with great difficulty, and when the battle replayed, he rushed out to leave the city. Behind him, little Stutter popped out. "Bring me along." Tai Yuanjun barked. "Shut up. Are you looking to die?" Little Stutter leapt up and grabbed onto Tai Yuanjun's clothes, hanging on his back like a kite. "Go, go." Tai Yuanjun wanted to kick him away, but he was afraid that little Stutterer's shouts would attract the attention of the remaining spiritual force. He had no choice but to drag him out of the city. His hatred for little Stutterer had reached a boiling point, and he planned to kill him as soon as he left the city. The little Stutterer clung tightly to Tai Yuanjun's back, and when he turned around and saw Lu Yin, he excitedly shouted, "Meat, meat." Tai Yuanjun's expression changed and he smacked little Stutterer on the head. "Shut up." The little Stutterer felt wronged as he pointed at Lu Yin and shouted for meat. Lu Yin blinked and watched as Tai Yuanjun dragged little Stutterer away. He was at a loss. "Meat? Seventh brother, get out of the city. What are you doing here? Don't let those ghosts find you." The monkey was scared as it was afraid of this place. Lu Yin took a deep breath and observed his surroundings, avoiding the aftershocks of the battle as he stared intently at the void. Not long after, the corpse king's figure crashed down, precisely at that location. At that moment, Lu Yin's eyes went wide and he clenched his fists tightly. The void cracked open and a finger descended, directly shattering the corpse king's figure before disappearing. Lu Yin was annoyed that he hadn't seen anything. He was too far away. Though he had to continue. The next day, Lu Yin continued to monitor the situation. The corpse king smashed down. The finger broke through the void and descended, shattering the corpse king with a single finger. This time, Lu Yin wasn't too far away from the corpse king, and the shockwaves from that finger had almost touched him. He was quite close, but he still couldn't see it clearly. However, he did see a long strand of hair. Lu Yin's breathing quickened. It was a woman, and the one who had used the dream finger was also a woman. His eyes turned red. He had to see it again. This time he was even closer, almost standing beside the corpse king. In the distance, Qiushi was staring at the sky, observing the serious art. She glanced at where Lu Yin was standing and her gaze turned cold. "Stay away, you'll be affected." Lu Yin ignored her as if he hadn't heard her. Qiushi frowned. "You'll die if you get affected. Stay away, that attack isn't something you can handle." Lu Yin looked at her. "Do your own thing." Qiushi's gaze turned cold. "If you want to die, don't drag us down with you. Stay away." Lu Yin growled, "Shut up." Qiushi's gaze turned cold and she wanted to attack, but she was surrounded by gray figures fighting fiercely. If she did, she would be discovered. "This is your only opportunity. Don't make a mistake." Lu Yin calculated the time and it was almost time. The next moment, the corpse king crashed down. The void tore apart as the dream finger descended. Standing beside the corpse king, Lu Yin could feel the power of that finger. It contained an unimaginable bone-chilling coldness that could destroy the heavens and the earth. It felt as if the sky had been frozen and then collapsed. It wasn't something that mortals could withstand. Although Lu Yin could display a power level that exceeded 300,000, he was still a mortal in the face of this finger. In the distance, Qiushi's expression changed. A star chessboard appeared beneath Lu Yin's feet, and he used the secret plan word, star chessboard. He moved and his body instantly disappeared. The corpse king was crushed by the finger, and Lu Yin instantly appeared outside the torn void. He looked into the distance and saw a gray figure with a gray symbol carved on its chest that looked like a cloud. The torn void should have been closed, but Lu Yin's appearance had attracted the remaining spiritual force's attention. The figure behind the void raised a finger and aimed at Lu Yin. Lu Yin's hair stood on end and his heart skipped a beat. He subconsciously used the secret plan word to escape, but the dream finger swept past his side and shattered his shoulder and half of his body. Fresh blood splattered onto the ground. Lu Yin crashed to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. Half of his body had almost disappeared. Because of the sudden change, some of the spiritual force that had been fighting in the surroundings were drawn over and attacked Lu Yin. In the distance, Qiu Shi's expression turned ugly. What an idiot. Lu Yin looked up and saw many spiritual force attacking him. These spiritual force remnants had been quite strong when they were alive, and there were even corpse kings among them. Lu Yin struggled to get up and grit his teeth. He was definitely going to die if he was surrounded. Qiu Shi's heart sank and she had a bad premonition. Lu Yin used the secret plan word again and moved in front of Qiu Shi. Sorry, I'll make it up to you in the future. He then rushed out of the city, using her as bait to share the burden of the attack. The remnant spiritual force attacks that had been attracted to Lu Yin and Qiu Shi descended, completely enveloping them. At this moment, Qiu Shi's hatred for Lu Yin reached a boiling point. This bastard had actually dared to drag her down with him. If she had known this would happen, she would have destroyed him back in the Sirius sect. Lu Yin had no other choice as he could not escape on his own, but it was different if he dragged Qiu Shi down with him. This situation was exactly the same as when the Sixth Mainland had invaded the transport continent. Only by dragging the Innerverse people down with him would he be able to save the Outerverse people. They would either live together or die together. Qiu Shi's footsteps were light, and she directly overtook Lu Yin. Her gaze was cold. If we survive, I'll make you pay the price. The star chessboard appeared beneath Lu Yin's feet once more. Since that's the case, I won't hold back. Apologies, eldest senior sister. He then vanished only to reappear and overtake Qiu Shi. Qiu Shi snorted, and hundreds of stars appeared in the sky around her as her body emitted a hazy halo. As the stars revolved, they transformed into an astral sword that slashed towards Lu Yin. Lu Yin's expression changed and he waved his hand to activate the secret art to forcefully divert the sword chi. The sword chi streaked across the void and slashed towards the ground, attracting even more spiritual force remnants. At that moment, the revolving stars suddenly disappeared and transformed into multiple swords that slashed towards Lu Yin. Lu Yin was shocked. What kind of sword technique was this? The sword chi covered the sky and Lu Yin could not withstand it in his current state. Qiu Shi did not kill him, but instead used her sword technique to trap him. She quickly swept past him with an icy gaze. Lu Yin tried to use his empty palm to disperse the sword technique formed from the stars, but half of his body was numb and he could not use it. The two had only exchanged a few breaths of time, and Lu Yin was trapped within Qiu Shi's sword technique. He wanted to use the plan secret art to escape, but he had used the plan secret art and then the secret art consecutively. His body could not take it anymore and countless spiritual force remnants surrounded him from all directions. When he saw that Qiu Shi was far away, Lu Yin helplessly took out his die and tapped it. The die continuously spun as he continuously dodged the sword technique attacks. The die stopped at 3 pips and Lu Yin waved his hand to disperse it. He condensed his star energy into star crystals and allowed the die to recover. He tapped the die again, but the spiritual force remnants around him were getting closer and closer. Above his head, a gray figure viciously slammed into him. It was most likely a corpse king. The die stopped at 4 pips and time stop space was activated. The scene in front of Lu Yin changed and he appeared in a gray-white space. He heaved a sigh of relief. He had made it in time or else it would have been difficult to escape. Lu Yin lay on the ground and endured the pain. His cosmic ring had been taken away, and he could not use medicine to heal himself. He had no choice but to rely on time. Fortunately, he had become a cruiser and could forcefully condense star energy into crystals. Even if there was no star energy in the gray-white space, the amount of star energy circulating within his body was enough. Lu Yin blocked the monkey and circulated the star energy within his body, condensing it into his palm. It was not very fast, but it was enough to maintain the gray-white space for some time. The star energy within his body was comparable to an enlighten's, so condensing a few hundred star essence worth of star crystals was not a problem for him. At the same time he was slowly recovering. Lu Yin looked around and tried to recall the diagram he had seen behind the spatial tear. He was certain that he had never seen such a diagram before, so he stopped thinking about it and started to recite the stonewall scriptures while condensing star crystals. A month quickly passed by and half of his body finally regained feeling. This meant that he could endure the pain on his own. Lu Yin gritted his teeth and let out a long sigh before continuing. Without medicine he could only slowly recover on his own. Another month passed and then another 2. A full 4 months had passed since he had entered the time-stop space, and only a small portion of his injuries had recovered. He continued. The scene in front of him changed and Lu Yin walked out of the time-stop space. In the distance Xianxia was fleeing, and the gray figure that was most likely a corpse king was pressing down on her. The star-scattered chessboard appeared beneath Lu Yin's feet and he moved. The next moment, Lu Yin left the encirclement and was not too far away from Xianxia. Xianxia turned around in shock. Impossible. No matter how many secret techniques he had, he couldn't use them consecutively. But he had already used them several times, so how could his body still be able to use them? Chapter 1122. No matter how Xianxia thought about it, she could not figure out how Lu Yin had done it. What shocked her even more was that the half of Lu Yin's body that had been on the verge of collapse had actually recovered. Lu Yin used the planned secret art twice in a row to surpass Xianxia. He then turned around and waved goodbye. He could still use the planned secret art one more time to escape. Xianxia's eyes trembled. Lu Yin, have you heard of my serious sex secret technique? Lu Yin paused and turned around. Celestial Star Secret Technique, Big Dipper Rotation, Stellar Shift. Her body vanished as soon as she finished speaking, only to reappear where Lu Yin had been. Lu Yin, on the other hand, had appeared where she had just been. Lu Yin was shocked. What kind of secret technique was this? Had they exchanged positions? Xianxia smiled and the stars around her began to revolve, increasing her speed. Lu Yin gritted his teeth and the star chessboard appeared beneath his feet. He wanted to leave, but in the next moment, a claw mark emerged from the ground. It was the sky beast claw, and an ancient beast roared as if it had transcended time itself. When the beast roared, Lu Yin's star chessboard was actually shattered. The sky beast claw had displayed an incomparably tyrannical might, and it was able to forcefully resist a secret technique. In Lu Yin's memory, there was only one battle technique that could forcefully resist a secret technique, which was a progenitor battle technique. For example, Knight King Zhenwu's archery technique. Was the Sky Beast Claw also a progenitor battle technique? Regardless of whether or not the Sky Beast Claw was a progenitor battle technique, Lu Yin could only endure it. He did not even have time to use the secret art. Fortunately, he still had his Fate's End and 9-line battle force. He curled up his body and his 9-lined battle force soared into the sky and imprinted itself onto his entire body. There was a loud bang and Lu Yin was sent flying like a ball. His back had taken a direct hit and his Fates and had retreated back into his body. His 9-line battle force had also cracked. This attack's power had definitely exceeded 300,000 or even 350,000. Fortunately, it was still within his tolerance range and the Sky Beast Claw had not been used at full strength. Blood trickled down the corner of Lu Yin's mouth, and he used the Sky Beast Claw's might to fly out of the city. Xianxia was in another direction. Lu Yin thought that there would be no more spiritual force left behind after the Sky Beast Claw, but when he turned around he saw that there were still countless gray spiritual forces chasing after him. One of them raised its hand again and it was the Sky Beast Claw. His expression changed drastically and he forced himself to use the planned secret art once more. His body moved a great distance away until he was outside the city. Less than 100 meters away, the tearful lady was staring at him in astonishment. Xiao Bai. The tearful lady thought that Lu Yin was going to attack her, but Lu Yin passed by her. Not only did she not relax, but she also became even more vigilant. Soon after, she saw an endless number of gray figures rushing towards them. Even with the crying girl's mental state, she felt a bit of a mental breakdown when she saw so many gray figures. She immediately ran away without thinking. Lu Yin passed by her and some other cultivators outside the city, including Daoist. He then rushed to Xiao Bai's side. Let's leave the inner steel world. Not only were the two girls fast, but they also reacted quickly. They knew that Lu Yin was in trouble, so they immediately took out a steel and pressed their hands on it. Their bodies were sucked in. Daoist and the others saw the endless gray figures rushing towards them after Lu Yin passed by them. They cursed, "F*ck this bastard." They ran as they cursed. Some took out steels and left, while others ran off into the distance. Daoist was one of those who ran off as he hadn't found a steel yet. Coincidentally, he saw Lu Yin's group leave the inner steel world and he felt aggrieved. Suddenly he saw Qianzhou. As a habitual escapee, Qianzhou had a habit of thinking of his escape route. Thus, when he arrived at the inner steel world, the first thing he did was to get rid of Lu Yin's group. The second thing he did was to go to a brothel to feast his eyes. The third thing he did was to find a steel to leave the inner steel world. He had done the right thing. Qianzhou looked at the endless gray figures in the distance and raised his brows. He calmly cursed Lu Yin and sighed at his foresight. He pressed one hand on the steel and looked at it proudly. I don't care how many ghosts you have, I'm leaving. But the next moment, a hand appeared on his shoulder just as he was about to disappear. Daoist had arrived. Brother, let's go together. Qianzhou was speechless. Why was he always the unlucky one? The scene in front of them changed and Lu Yin, Xiao He and Xiao Bai appeared at the bottom of the sea. This was where they had captured Qianzhou and entered the inner steel world. Daoist had used Qianzhou to leave the inner steel world, but when he came out he was still at the same place he had entered. Qianzhou appeared right after the three of them. When he saw Lu Yin's group he almost cursed out loud, but when he thought about his own strength he held himself back. Lu Yin's actions were truly hateful. The cycle of the inner steel world had turned into a war, and all sorts of battle techniques had appeared in a city that was beneficial to many people. However, because of Lu Yin, many cultivators had been forced to flee. There were too many people cursing him. Lu Yin knew that he had caused trouble, but he had no other choice. He couldn't just take those gray figures away. He had to survive, and these people could only count themselves as unlucky. Hey, you don't look very friendly, Xiao He taunted as he stared at Qianzhou. Qianzhou blinked and forced a smile. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. See you later. Lu Yin smiled and watched Qianzhou leave. He was very interested in Qianzhou's speed battle technique, but he couldn't really rob him. There were so many seniors watching. Forget it, there would always be a chance to learn a good speed battle technique in the future. Furthermore, the plan's secret art made up for the lack of speed to a certain extent. Lu Yin thought of Qiu Shi and the Serious Sect's secret technique, stellar transposition. It was a good technique. Let's go. We'll continue looking for Hai Lu, Lu Yin said. There was no time limit for the Star Tower contest, and the standard was the number of people on the golden screen. If there were people on the golden screen, then it meant that the time for the final contest had arrived. However, there wasn't a single person on the golden screen right now, so it was possible that most people hadn't climbed the mountain yet. Lu Yin didn't want to become a target for everyone to attack. The Tear Lady was an enlighter, and the Xianxia sect must have reached that level as well. What about the others? He didn't know how many enlighters were here and he didn't want to stand out. There were inheritances in the sea and there were inheritances in the mountains as well. Many people were searching for inheritances in the sea, while others were climbing the mountains. The mountains were so tall that ordinary people couldn't climb them. Back in the Golden Ocean space, Lu Yin had needed to borrow the power of the Stonewall Scriptures to climb that mountain. Fortunately, the mountains here weren't like the ones in the Golden Ocean space that could make people disappear. The 5 mountains here were very difficult to climb, but those who could participate in the Star Tower contest were not simple people. At the bottom of one of the mountains, several cultivators were struggling to climb it. This mountain was created by a progenitor, and there was a pressure that was not released on purpose. It was the might of a progenitor, and those with poor spiritual force could not even approach the mountain, let alone climb it. The difficulty of climbing each mountain was different, and the obstacles one would encounter were different as well. Boulders would often roll down this mountain, but they weren't real stones. Instead, they were condensed from star energy that resembled boulders. If one was struck by one, the consequences would be dire. The higher one climbed, the larger the boulders would be. These cultivators had been climbing for more than 10 days, but they hadn't even reached a fifth of the way up. If I'd known this would happen, I wouldn't have climbed the mountain. It would have been better to ride the Hailu in the sea. Maybe we could have entered the monument inner world and seen the ancient scenery, one of the cultivators complained. Not far away, a woman sneered. You didn't object when we decided to climb the mountain together. What's the point of saying all this now? Keep climbing. There's definitely more inheritances on the mountain than in the sea. That's right. Keep up your attitude and continue climbing, a calm man at the top said. Roughly 2 hours later, a boulder crashed down and several cultivators worked together to shatter it. Below, a figure was quickly climbing up and the boulder did not affect him at all. The cultivators looked at him in shock. It's Xia Jiuyo from the Xia family. He's one of the top heirs. No wonder he's so fast. Soon Xia Jiuyo overtook them and climbed to the top of the mountain. As he watched Xia Jiuyo leave, the complaining cultivator snorted. What's there to be proud of? Who knows how many people he's been beaten up by since he entered the mountain and sea realm. Even those from the 7 courts looked down on him. He's a disgrace to the Xia family. Although the others did not say anything, they all had the same thought. Since ancient times, the heirs of the 7 courts Xia family had always been the top. Even if they couldn't compare to the prime clear lineage who cultivated the 3 young ancestral qi, they were at least comparable to the second strongest. They were not inferior to the heirs of the Sirius sect or the Mavis family, but this Xia Jiuyo was too weak. Just as they were thinking about this, another figure flashed past, and 3 streams of energy surrounded him as he chased after Xia Jiuyo. The cultivators were shocked. It's the 3 young ancestral qi, the prime clear lineage. The prime clear lineage is here. Even higher up, Xia Jiuyo looked down helplessly and saw the streams of energy coming at him. Brother Prime Clear, there's no enmity between us. There's no need to chase me. The Prime Clear lineage waved his hand and the streams of energy whistled past. Xia Jiuyo dodged with great difficulty. The 7 courts have no part in this competition. Back off. Xia Jiuyo dodged the streams of energy with great difficulty. His reaction speed was not slow and his physical strength was not weak. He also had many battle techniques, but in the end he was unable to avoid the attacks. He was hit in the chest and fell down the mountain. The prime clear lineage watched Xia Jiuyo fall and shook his head. This generation's heirs were too weak. They hadn't even mastered the Xia family's secret technique. The Xia secret word, void transformation, was the most tyrannical secret technique of the 7 courts. If Xia Jiuyo couldn't master it, then he didn't deserve to be surnamed Xia. Outside the mountain and sea realm, a group of experts from the older generation was watching a screen in front of them. The screen showed many scenes of the competition for the Star Tower, and most of them were related to the top heirs. Elder Yuan Ku of the Sirius sect, Xing Shenwei of Everlasting Sky Island, Mu En of the Hall of Honor, Qin Mavis of the Mavis family, and so on. In this small region of space, there were several cultivators with power levels over 500,000, and there were even some with power levels over 900,000. Among them was Xia Meng of the Xia family, a goddess who had once been popular in the Neoverse. Chapter 1123. Xia Meng calmly looked at the screen. Even though she had lived for a long time, almost as long as Yuanshi had lived, time had not left a deep mark on her face. She was still as beautiful as ever, and the passage of time had only left behind her temperament. She was like an ancient wine that would only become more fragrant as time passed. Haizid Shenwei looked at Xia Meng with an infatuated expression. She was just too beautiful. Ahem. In the distance, Muen coughed. This generation of the Xia family's descendant is a bit weak. The others glanced at Xia Meng, but they did not say anything. Haizid Shenwei spoke up. Not bad. Anyone who encounters the 3 sons' ancestral qi will end up like this. Muen looked at Haizid Shenwei in amusement. The kid who represents Everlasting Island isn't weak either. He was able to fight against the 3 sons' ancestral qi and escape unscathed. He even made the Prime Clear cautious. He fought with the crying lady and injured her twice. He even forced her to reveal her strength as an enlighter. There are very few people in the mountain and sea realm who can do that. Haizid Shenwei smiled. Not bad, not bad. Elder Yuanka spoke up. That kid isn't bad and I quite like him. Haizid Shenwei became even happier, but he did not forget about Xia Meng. He walked over. Actually, every generation of the Xia family's descendant isn't bad. Go back and train yourself and you'll eventually be able to improve. Xia Meng raised her head and glanced at Shenwei with her crescent moon-like eyes. She then glanced at the others and said indifferently, the Xia clan doesn't want to ruin your plans, but we want one of the 5 constellations. The others all looked at Xia Meng with different expressions, especially Mu En from the Hall of Honor. He looked at Xia Meng strangely. Even if the Xia family pays a high price, it'll be useless. The outcome has already been decided and no one can change it. Xia Meng's lips curled up and the sky lit up. I like you. Everyone was stunned and Haizid Shenwei was stunned. Or rather, everyone was stunned. Even Mu En himself was stunned. His last words, Xia Meng continued slowly. Everyone sighed in relief. Haizid Shenwei was speechless. Don't just leave things hanging or you'll scare people to death. Mu En was speechless. Xia Meng smiled and did not say anything else. Only then did everyone remember what Xia Meng had said. She liked Mu En's last words? Mu En's last sentence was no one can change it. What did that mean? Mu En looked at Xia Meng seriously. Was she so confident in the successor of the Xia family? Back in the mountain and sea realm, the Prime Clear One had defeated Xia Juyo and yet did not continue to climb. Instead he sat down as if waiting for something. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 10 days, Lu Yin had found a few treasures by following the ocean currents. There were ores, natural treasures and even battle techniques, but none of them were of much use to him. During these 10 days he did not see any of the other 10 arbiters, but he did hear quite a few things. Some people said that when Xianxia had been severely injured and had fallen to the bottom of the sea. Others said that the spirit palace had run into Ascension Mavis and had been forced out of the mountain and sea realm. Others said that they had seen the 13 swords of the sword sect collapse, and that they had been killed by an invisible person. Along the way, Lu Yin heard rumors that were unfavorable to the 10 arbiters. Although Lu Yin had confidence in the 10 arbiters, Qiu Shi, Yu Hua and Yu Hua were all top disciples, and even more frightening was the fact that they had all broken through to the Enlighter realm. Lu Yin considered himself to be among the strongest of the 10 arbiters, so it was not surprising that the 10 arbiters were not their opponents. After all, he had not been able to defeat the Crying Lady. Regardless of whether the 10 arbiters won or lost, it had nothing to do with Lu Yin. He was not worried about the 10 arbiters' survival, but at the very least, they were existences that could work together. He did not believe that he could face off against those Enlighter realm geniuses by himself. Although he represented Everlasting Island, he was still from the Innerverse and he represented both the Innerverse and the Outerverse. On this day, Lu Yin was arguing with Little Black and Xiao Bai about the unequal distribution of the spoils when the distant mountain cracked open. At the same time, all 5 mountains cracked open, and each of them revealed an extraordinary scene. A giant eye appeared on one of the mountains that covered the entire peak. It stared blankly at the mountain and sea realm, and there seemed to be a world within it that contained the stars of Sirius. The roots of a plant appeared on another mountain. It looked ordinary, but it gave off a strange feeling that made one's mind clear. A mountain appeared and the sky was covered in fog, making it impossible to see what was inside. A strange illusion appeared on one of the mountains as if countless people were reciting something that resonated with the world. A drop of blood appeared on the mountain closest to Lu Yin's group, illuminating the entire mountain and sea realm. Half of the mountain and sea realm was dyed red, and it reflected off the golden screen. Lu Yin's group stared blankly at the 5 mountains that had cracked open, dumbfounded. The ghost monkey's excited voice suddenly rang out. Progenitor's blood. It's progenitor's blood. 7th bro, hurry up and snatch it. Lu Yin was surprised and he stared at the drop of blood that had appeared on the mountain. Is that the blood of a progenitor? Yes, 7th bro, we have to get it. The value of progenitor's blood is immeasurable. It can be used to comprehend a progenitor's inheritance, and it can also be used as a progenitor's weapon to attack. Either way, it's very profound and it's very valuable. We have to get it. Lu Yin was moved as well. Who wouldn't be moved by a progenitor's item? Scope. Lu Yin did not compete with Little Black and Xiao Bai over the spoils of war, and he brought the 2 girls towards the mountain. Regardless of whether or not they could get it, they had to at least try. As the mountain cracked open, all of the cultivators in the mountain and sea realm grew excited and rushed towards it. At the foot of the mountain, Sujiu Mingguang and the young masters of the Aurora Spacecraft Company all appeared and began a shocking battle. At the foot of the mountain where the plant's roots appeared, Xia Luo, Xu Jing, Qing Guangshan, and the other experts from the home of the gods arrived. At the foot of the mountain covered in fog, the Xiaoye Ting, Tai Yishan, Xia Tian and the others were gathered. At the foot of the mountain where the illusion had appeared was Qing Long Long, the descendants of the Hui and Yu families as well as Starsabil. At the foot of the mountain where the progenitor's blood had appeared was Lan Si, and at the same time, a masked woman appeared. Her eyes were as clear as flowing water, mesmerizing others. Lu Yin's group also headed towards the mountain. More than a month had passed since the contest for the Star Tower, and the majority of the cultivators had already headed towards the mountain. The moment the mountain split open, it was also the moment when many cultivators gathered. At the foot of the mountain, Prime Clarity stood up and looked at the foot of the mountain. Sujiu Mingguang and the young masters of the Aurora Spacecraft Company were fighting. Prime Clarity's gaze turned cold. Everything was going according to plan and there were no accidents. The so-called 5 signs of the stars had already been decided long ago, and all that was missing was an opportunity to announce it to the public. The contest for the Star Tower seemed fair, and everyone could compete for the progenitor's inheritance. However, was there such a thing as absolute fairness in the universe? Since the inheritances of the 5 mountains and 5 seas existed, how could the Hall of Honor let them go? The inheritances of the mountains and seas had long since been taken away, and they had even been inherited by the Hall of Honor. All that remained were some gifts that were used to maintain the excitement of the contest for the Star Tower. If not for the mountains and seas inheritances, the Hall of Honor would not have been able to obtain so many powerful battle techniques and secret techniques. These people were too laughable. Each of them had vainly tried to compete for the position of the 5 signs of the stars, but they did not know that they had long since lost their chance. The 5 signs of the stars had been predetermined, and the inheritances that they had received had long since been given to them. This was the reality of the universe, and these people were only there to serve as a foil. At the foot of the mountain, Sujiu used his inherited technique, battle policy theory, to fuse many different battle techniques together and simplify them. He displayed a battle techniques concept that far surpassed that of his peers. Coupled with his force field, he was able to suppress invisible light at first, but invisible light's domain was simply too powerful. The moment he opened his eyes, even battle policy theory could not predict his next move. Invisible light, on the other hand, could see Sujiu's next attack. In less than 15 minutes, Sujiu was forced to retreat pathetically as he stared at invisible light in shock. This was one of the Innerverse 10 arbiters, and he was simply a monster. He had the Su family's inheritance, and he had been cultivating in the Neoverse, but he had still been suppressed by this person. How had the Innerverse given birth to such a monster? On the other side, the young master of the Aurora spacecraft had already retreated. He did not even look back as he left, which puzzled invisible light. The mountain had split open and the inheritance had appeared. Leaving at this time was equivalent to giving up, or was there an even greater inheritance? Invisible light was wrong, as the young master of the Aurora spacecraft was not looking for an even greater inheritance. Instead, he had seen the person who had walked out of the mountain, the Prime Clear One. With the Prime Clear One here, there was no hope. A bolt of lightning flashed and Ku-Lei appeared. He climbed up the mountain at an unprecedented speed. He had also seen the Prime Clear One, but he believed that he could use his secret technique to resist. As long as he could enter the giant eye, he would be able to obtain the inheritance. Sujiu frowned and a star-scattered chessboard appeared beneath his feet. The next moment, Sujiu appeared in front of Ku-Lei. A giant ruler formed from his force field appeared above his head, and he smashed it down. Ku-Lei shouted, "Scram." He then tapped out with a finger. The Ku family's finger Zen clashed with the Su family's battle policy theory. The Ku family's finger Zen contained the profound meaning of the Wither Zen, which made the target lose all desire to resist. On the other hand, the Su family's battle policy theory could combine all sorts of battle techniques into one and simplify them. It could deal with all sorts of battle techniques, and this naturally included the Ku family's finger Zen. The 7 courts had joined forces to protect progenitor Chen's tomb, but they were also competing against each other. Ku-Lei and Sujiu retreated at the same time. At this moment, the Prime Clear One descended. He raised his hand and 3 streams of air swept towards Ku-Lei, Sujiu and Invisible Light. Apart from Invisible Light, the other 2 had experienced the power of the 3 Suns' ancestral chi. No matter what kind of attack they used, they could not deal with the 3 Suns' ancestral chi, which was extremely powerful. Ku-Lei and Sujiu attacked the Prime Clear One at the same time. The Prime Clear One's force field transformed into a giant human figure. It was himself, and he pressed down on the Prime Clear One with a palm. A stream of air swirled past, piercing through the force field from bottom to top. It whistled past and crashed into the Prime Clear One. The Prime Clear One could predict the opponent's attack and make effective responses. However, he was helpless against the Three Suns' ancestral chi, especially when his domain was completely useless. The moment the Prime Clear One descended, it meant that the battle here was about to end. This was a play directed by the Hall of Honor, with the Prime Clear One as the main characters. The Prime Clear One and the others were only supporting characters, nothing more. At the foot of the mountain where the plant's roots appeared, Xu Jing and Qin Guangshan were fighting, while Tai Yuanjun faced Xiao Luo. Chapter 1124. He hadn't placed Xiao Luo in his eyes at first, but after exchanging blows with Xiao Luo he realized how terrifying Xiao Luo was. Xiao Luo's control over star energy was too strong, and all of his attacks had been neutralized. To be more precise, Xiao Luo's lock-breaking techniques were useless against Xiao Luo. Furthermore, Xiao Luo didn't use any battle techniques and his attacks were very casual. It was as if he could fight however he wanted. Tai Yuanjun was sullen. His star energy transformed into a flute, and with a song of farewell he sent off the 9 heavens. The music from the desolator turned into ripples in front of Xiao Luo and spread out, unable to touch him at all. Tai Yuanjun was astonished. This person was also a cruiser and it seemed like he had just broken through. Despite that, he was still able to block Tai Yuanjun's attack. Xiao Luo looked at Tai Yuanjun calmly. Second on the top 100 rankings, you live up to your reputation. Tai Yuanjun stared at Xiao Luo. Who are you? Xiao Luo smiled. I studied at the Astral Combat Academy and I was Lu Yin's classmate. Tai Yuanjun was shocked. You're from the Innerverse? Xiao Luo smiled. Not really. Origin Lord Chong Shao spun around in his palm, then charged towards Xiao Luo. I don't care where you're from. Get out of my way. Xiao Luo stepped aside and looked past Tai Yuanjun at the surface of the sea not far away. There, a graceful figure was slowly approaching. She wore a strange mask that was half red and half white. It was the crying girl. The appearance of the tearful woman caused them to stop. Although the teardrop lady was only the second-ranked disciple of the Hall of Honor, her battle record was not much worse than that of the Prime Clear lineage. This was especially true when she had battled against one of the 10 arbiters, Lu Tianmu, before the Star Tower contest. It was rumored that she had defeated Lu Tianmu, which meant that she possessed terrifying strength. Suddenly, a terrifying wave of star energy swept out, causing the surface of the sea to boil and the sky to freeze. Tai Yuanjun, Qin Guangshan and the others were stunned. An enlighter? The tearful lady immediately erupted with the power of an enlighter and used her innate gift. Ripples spread out and gradually enveloped the entire foot of the mountain. She wanted to use her innate gift of hypnosis to knock everyone out. Qin Guangshan's eyes narrowed as a formless screen of light appeared in front of him. It was exactly the same as the one Coquettish had used to deal with Lu Yin. Following that, all sorts of weapons appeared in his hands as he attacked the tearful lady. Lu Yin was the only one present who could fight against the crying lady. Xu Jing would not fight against her, and as a hunter, Lu Yin was the only opponent that the crying lady cared about. The tearful woman's gaze was fixed on him from the beginning to the end, but no one believed that he could defeat the tearful woman. If it was Supreme God who came, there would still be a glimmer of hope, just a glimmer. At the foot of the mountain, the Xiaoye Ting and Tai Yixing were battling. One sealed his opponent's star energy, while the other weakened his opponent's rune lines. Both of their attacks were strange and difficult to deal with. The little Leaf King appeared cold on the surface, but he was actually feeling quite helpless. Back in his era there had not been so many experts and there had not been any 10 arbiters. However, in this era the 10 arbiters and the heirs of the various great powers in the Neoverse were all very difficult to deal with. Other than the Little Leaf King and Supreme God, there was also Summer, Little Stutterer, and the others at the foot of the mountain trying their best to climb up. Just as everyone was fighting fiercely, green grass appeared on the surface of the sea. It looked full of vitality, but there was an indescribable strangeness to it. Normal people would know that it was impossible for grass to grow on the sea. There was only one possibility, and that was the appearance of winged mavis. The Mavis family had controlled the economy of the human star domain since ancient times, and their foundations were unfathomable. As the core successor of the Mavis family, Ascension Mavis was publicly acknowledged as a top-notch expert even if she had never made a move. She was in existence on par with the Prime Clear. Her appearance made everyone stop what they were doing. This inheritance has nothing to do with you. Leave, Ascension Mavis said calmly as her gaze swept across everyone. Supreme God and the Little Leaf King stopped fighting, while Summer stared at Ascension Mavis. As the top of the top 100 rankings, he had once challenged someone from the Mavis family in the Innerverse. His greatest impression of the Mavis family was that they were rich, and their strength was not just any ordinary strength. He did not know what these women ate to be so strong. This woman before him was the only expert sent by the Mavis family to participate in the Star Tower contest, so her strength was likely to be ridiculously high. Little Stutterer hid in the distance and looked at Ascension Mavis. He swallowed hard, feeling a little afraid. That woman might be very powerful. With that thought in mind, he immediately approached the Little Leaf King. The Little Leaf King sized up Ascension Mavis. In his era, there had been a Treeheart inheritor from the Mavis family, and their strength had been unshakable. He wondered how strong the Treeheart inheritor would be in this era. Ascension Mavis knew that they would not retreat just because she said so. As she thought about it, the grass beneath her feet spread and covered the entire surface of the sea. Then the grass grew wildly and twisted together to form a giant green fist, just like the one she had used to deal with the Spirit Palace. Dozens of giant fists smashed towards everyone. At the foot of the mountain, there were more than 20 cultivators engaged in a fierce battle. At this moment, all of them were facing the green fists. One cultivator tried to resist, but he was sent flying the moment he made contact. The rest of the cultivators were the same. Little Stutterer immediately fled as he would not fight recklessly. The Little Leaf King used star transmutation, and the star energy around Ascension Mavis transformed into leaves that trapped her. Ascension Mavis was surprised and she smiled as she looked at the Little Leaf King. Her eyes flashed with a verdant green, and in the next moment, the leaves that had trapped her transformed back into star energy. Star transmutation had failed. The Little Leaf King's pupils shrank and his expression turned sluggish. He then used star transmutation to trap the rest of the cultivators. Daoist stared at the green fists that were smashing towards him. He was using the true scripture of Aeon evolution to weaken the rune lines on the fists, but the star energy around his body transformed into leaves that trapped him. He turned to glare at the Little Leaf King, and when he saw the latter's sluggish expression, his heart sank. He thought about the Mavis family's innate gift and cursed inwardly. With a thump, his body was smashed into the sea by the green fists. If Daoist was like this, then the rest of the cultivators were even more so. Ascension Mavis had only used a single attack to send everyone, including Daoist, to the bottom of the sea. The Little Leaf King was also sent to the bottom of the sea under her control, but the green fists did not dissipate. Instead, they transformed into grass that bound everyone and pinned them to the bottom of the sea. Ascension Mavis lowered her head and glanced at them, then walked up the mountain with a faint smile. Suddenly she paused and turned around. A figure rushed out from the bottom of the sea in a rather sorry state, but he had managed to break free from the grass. It was Daoist. You were able to escape? Ascension Mavis was shocked. Daoist panted heavily and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. His pupils transformed into runes as he stared at Ascension Mavis. A screen of star energy appeared around him, and the weapons in his hands continuously changed. Finally, they transformed into 5 black spheres that he released and they spiraled towards Ascension Mavis. Ascension Mavis smiled. Rune Technologies, Omniscient Realm. You are the first person in your generation to reach the Omniscient Realm. You are indeed worthy of being a top descendant of the home of the gods. It's a pity that you haven't reached the Enlighter realm yet. The 5 black spheres surrounded Ascension Mavis and then exploded one after another. Each explosion created an unparalleled shockwave that tore through the void. The 5 spheres all exploded at the same time, and their combined power caused the void around Ascension Mavis to shatter. Even with Daoist's strength, it was not easy to create these 5 black spheres, and this was his strongest attack. As the dust settled, Ascension Mavis appeared in front of Daoist without any injuries. The green grass slowly retreated, and there was not even a wrinkle on her clothes. Daoist was shocked. How was this possible? Ascension Mavis looked at him. Since when has your home of the gods ever defeated my Mavis family? As she spoke, she tapped lightly with her finger, and the grass around Daoist's legs suddenly tightened. He howled and immediately weakened the grass's rune lines, but it was too late. His entire body was dragged to the bottom of the sea, and he spat out a mouthful of blood as he gradually lost his strength. Ascension Mavis turned around and continued climbing the mountain. At the foot of the mountain where countless people were chanting, the Hui family's descendant Hui Santong and the Yu family's descendant Yu Qin were also engaged in an intense battle. Besides them, there were also Qing Longlong, Starsabil and more than 10 other cultivators. Starsabil's battles were stifling, as she was often able to predict the future and predict the future ahead of time. The cultivators who fought with her were all disgusted by her and left. She looked up at the illusion and silently listened to the countless people chanting, as if she could receive the inheritance from this position. In the distance, Qiu Shi appeared with a calm expression. She had just arrived at the foot of the mountain when nearly 1,000 stars revolved around her and covered everyone. Following that, she unleashed a serious palm that caused the stars to explode, and all of the cultivators were affected. Hui Santong silently cursed at this crazy woman and used the Hui secret art to break through all battle techniques. He shuttled through the exploding stars and appeared in front of Qiu Shi, a golden meteor appearing in his palm. Qiu Shi looked up, and her figure disappeared as Yu Weeping appeared in her original position. She had used a secret technique, stellar transposition, to switch places with Yu Weeping. Yu Weeping had been dodging the exploding stars, but who knew that she would suddenly be switched places? Not only did she have to face the exploding stars, but she also had to face Hui Santong's golden meteor. Her reaction was a step too slow, and her shoulder was struck by the golden meteor. Her face turned pale as she fell to the bottom of the sea. The other cultivators also fell to the bottom of the sea one by one, and it was like rain. Qiu Shi waved her hand, and the power of an enlighter erupted. The stars revolved once more before exploding, and the power was even more terrifying than before. Hui Santong was shocked, and he could not use the Hui secret art continuously. He could only try his best to dodge, but this serious palm had caused the entire space to explode and he could not avoid it. He was injured by the exploding stars and also fell to the bottom of the sea. This was Qiu Shi's power level. So what if she was a descendant of the Hui family? The 7 courts had long since gone downhill, and in a few more years, they might not even be able to protect progenitor Chen's tomb. She looked at Starsabil, who had not moved at all from start to finish. However, the exploding stars had not been able to harm her at all. Starsabil met Qiu Shi's gaze and smiled. I don't plan on climbing the mountain. Qiu Shi's gaze trembled. You're this generation's Starsabil? Help me divine who the 5 astral children are. Starsabil smiled. There's no need for that. She looked at the 5 mountains. There are 5 directions. You've already divided them up, haven't you? Qiu Shi's gaze was calm as she looked deeply at Starsabil. She then walked past Starsabil and walked up the mountain. Don't try to be smart or else you'll get burned. Starsabil did not say anything and she quietly watched Qiu Shi climb the mountain. 5 mountains, 5 directions and 5 peerless successors. They also represented the 5 sons of the stars. Thank you, brothers, for your support. Chapter 11:25. The Neoverse is truly dark. This is the Hall of Honor's methods. The so-called Star Tower competition is just a stage set up for them. Even the 7 courts can't change this, Starsabil muttered to herself as she looked into the distance. She hoped that they would do as she said and work together to create a miracle. For some reason, Starsabil thought of Lu Yin. In her plan, Lu Yin was the only exception as she could not account for him. I hope you can create a miracle as well, Starsabil muttered to herself. It was unknown who she was saying this to. Lu Yin quickly approached the mountain with Little Black and Xiao Bai. As soon as they reached the foot of the mountain, they saw Lan Si sweeping through the area. His empty palms had rendered all the cultivators immobile, and many of them floated on the surface of the sea, wailing in pain. When he saw Lu Yin arrive, Lan Si's eyes lit up. I knew you would come. You can't miss out on this. Before Lu Yin could speak, Xiao Bai spoke first. Hey Lu Yin, introduce us to this handsome guy. Little Black was also looking forward to it. Lu Yin was speechless. He's called Lan Si. Is he handsome? Little Bai and Little Black nodded vigorously. Lan Si looked at the 2 girls in astonishment, and then he seemed to recall something. His expression turned strange. Are they from Eternal Sky Island? Lu Yin nodded and helplessly replied, That's troublesome. Little Bai and Little Black stared at Lu Yin with an expression that said, Don't spout nonsense. Lan Si was amused. In the distance, a veiled woman looked at the group and slowly approached. Lu Yin and the others looked over. She removed her veil, revealing a peerless face. They were all stunned, and even Little Bai and Little Black were stunned. Brothel Queen. Lu Yin blurted out in surprise. The woman who had appeared before them was Mingyu. Lu Yin had seen her in a brothel outside the mountain and sea realm, and she had left a deep impression on him. Mingyu smiled. Greetings. Why are you here? Lu Yin was puzzled. Mingyu smiled. Brothels are places of prostitution, but they are also a power of the Neoverse. The mountain and sea realm is an inheritance of the human domain, so anyone who knows the location can enter. Lu Yin understood. Hey Lu Yin. You're visiting a brothel? I'm going to tell Master, Little Black said as she stared at Mingyu with hostility. Xiaobai was unhappy as well. I'll definitely tell Master and Senior Brother Shenwei. Lu Yin wanted to say that it was Haizid Shenwei who had brought him to the brothel, but he didn't dare to do so. Who knew if Haizid Shenwei was watching him right now? Lu Yin's guess was correct, as Haizid Shenwei was indeed staring at them. To be more precise, he was staring at Mingyu with an infatuated expression. What a beautiful woman. Lan Si was not interested in Mingyu, and he said to Lu Yin, if I'm not wrong, then that drop of blood should be a progenitor's blood. Brother Lu, if you want it, then I'll give it to you. Seventh bro, don't waste your breath. Hurry up and take the progenitor blood. That's progenitor blood. The monkey was impatient. Lu Yin apologized to Lan Si. I'm sorry, but the progenitor blood is useful to me. I'll compensate you when we get out. Lan Si shook his head. There's no need. He then muttered to himself for a moment before continuing. On the way to the Neoverse, Starsabil told us that we should work together. Even if only one of the 10 arbiters becomes one of the 5 astral children, it's fine. She wants us to do our best to break the law that keeps the 5 astral children from returning to the Neoverse. Lu Yin laughed. If you listen to her, then you won't be the 10 arbiters anymore. Lan Si smiled. She underestimates us too much. Even if we can't become one of the 5 astral children and obtain the inheritance, we won't work together. The 10 arbiters are 10 individuals, but that's just my opinion. Then why did you agree to work together with her back then? Lu Yin was curious. Lan Si replied, it was just to obtain more information about the Star Tower competition. Also, don't you think that the Starsabil sect is a little too enthusiastic about the competition between the 5 astral children? The Starsabil sect has always been aloof from worldly affairs, but after establishing the top 100 rankings, they pushed out the 10 arbiters. Now they're even meddling with the Neoverse 5 astral children. Feels like they're plotting something. Lu Yin nodded as he had the same feeling. The Starsabil sect had always been mysterious, so it was not strange for them to be plotting something. Seventh bro, hurry up and get the progenitor blood. The monkey was really anxious. Lu Yin laughed, but there was no point in being anxious. A terrifying power had already appeared in another direction, and whether it was him, Lan Si, or this courtesan, they had all sensed it. Otherwise, why would they be chatting at the foot of the mountain? That terrifying power definitely belonged to an enlighter, but Lu Yin did not know who it was. The group did not speak much and simply headed towards the mountain. To the right, the sea was boiling and the seawater was being baked by the high temperature, causing white mist to form. Warhorses neighed as illusory black flames burned the void. The person who had appeared at the foot of the mountain was an expert from Burial Garden Hidden Weep. The Yu family's descendant was named Yu Qin, while the Burial Garden's descendant was named Hidden Weep. Although brothels were brothels, they were extremely famous in the Neoverse, especially after the Sixth Mainland's invasion. One brothel had flown to the cosmic sea and flown in the sky. Mingyu was the courtesan of the brothel, and she was a super genius who had reached the hunter realm. She had also seen the Burial Garden's expert. Little Black and Xiaobai had also seen her. It could be said that the people who had appeared around Lu Yin were all top-notch people in the mountain and sea realm, aside from Little Black and Xiaobai. However, these 2 girls were so fast that even Ku Lei could not keep up with them. No one could deny that they were the top of their generation. As he watched Hidden Weep slowly walk over, Lu Yin took a deep breath. This person's appearance overlapped with the illusory figure on a warhorse that he had seen once in the Outerverse. Hidden Weep's eyes were cold, and it was this person. That person who had ridden a warhorse through space and almost destroyed Lu Yin's spacecraft had come from the Burial Garden. As one of the 3 dark hands, the burial garden was the most mysterious. He seemed to have some sort of connection with the burial garden, as Xianxia had once said that the burial garden would come looking for him. Illusory black flames spread out, burning the foot of the mountain and covering the sea. The other cultivators hurriedly retreated as some could not see Hidden Weep at all. Those who could see him immediately fled. Lan Si's expression turned serious and he stepped forward. "Brother Lu, I'll open a path for you." Lu Yin frowned. "Be careful." Lan Si approached Hidden Weep step by step. Hidden Weep's illusory black flames transformed into a spear, and he raised it and pointed it at Lan Si. "Leave the mountain and sea realm." Lan Si raised his head and charged forward, striking out with a palm that contained 150 stacks. Hidden Weep's black spear stabbed out. The palm and spear collided, causing the void to crack like a spiderweb. Lan Si's expression changed. He knew that Hidden Weep was strong, but he had not expected him to be able to block his 150 stacks head-on. Was his body that strong as well? No, it was his warhorse's strength. Hidden Weep was a knight and he was one with his warhorse. The strength he could display was unimaginable. Even so, he was still shocked by Lan Si's overlaying stacks. From what he knew, very few people could block a single spear strike. Lu Tianmu had relied on the 13 swords, but Lan Si had relied on overlaying stacks. The warhorse neighed and roared at the sky as illusory black flames swept towards Lan Si. Lan Si retreated and moved his palm, striking out with a hollow palm. Lu Yin's eyes widened. The hollow palm was not only Lan Si's trump card, but it was also his most powerful attack. The hollow palm was known as an invisible palm print, and even if one could see it, they might not be able to dodge it, let alone receive it head-on. Up until now, only 2 people had been able to receive the hollow palm head-on. One was Mu Xing, who had used her innate gift of wood transformation, but she could not last more than a few hits. The other was Xianxia, who had used the ancestral qi of the 3 suns to block it. Xianxia was the only one who had been able to receive the hollow palm head-on. Even Crying Lady had spat out blood after receiving the attack. The hollow palm contained an enormous amount of rune lines and Lu Yin could see it. His palm traversed the void and descended in front of Hidden Weep. Suddenly, illusory black flames ignited, but the hollow palm did not hit Hidden Weep. Instead, it struck the black flames that enveloped his body, dissipating quite a bit. As for Hidden Weep, he did not even take half a step back. Lan Si's expression turned serious, as very few people could receive the hollow palm. This burial garden's successor was very terrifying. Hidden Weep looked at Lan Si in amazement. The 10 arbiters truly live up to their reputation. Lu Tianmu is very strong and so are you. What a pity. He then let out a desolate whistle as a strange book appeared above his head. There was an ancient powerhouse known as the 9th Shield. His innate gift was a shield, Hidden Weep slowly explained, and the black flames around him disappeared to be replaced by a shield. Lan Si raised his brows. Hidden Weep had retracted the black flames, which meant that those flames could not withstand more than a few hollow palms. He should have continued to attack, but now he had switched to this shield. In the distance, Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. What innate gift was this? 9th Shield's shield? He could borrow someone else's innate gift? To the side, the courtesan Ming Yu's face paled. Legends say that the burial garden is a place where the dead can be reborn. 9th Shield was a powerhouse who died many years ago, but his innate gift was actually borrowed. Lu Yin was shocked. Hidden Weep had really borrowed someone's innate gift and a dead person's innate gift at that. Xiao Bai and Xiao He looked at Hidden Weep in fear. This person was very strange. Lan Si did not think much of it and immediately struck out with his hollow palm. The hollow palm's power was too great, and it traversed the void to land in front of Hidden Weep. There was a loud bang and a portion of Hidden Weep's shield caved in, but it still managed to block the hollow palm. Hidden Weep raised his spear and charged at Lan Si, thrusting it out. The spear rotated as the tip pierced through the void. Lan Si hurriedly dodged and Hidden Weep forcefully changed the direction of his attack. If he could not hit Lan Si, then he would stab someone else. He had to hit at least one of them. Xiao Bai and Xiao He shrieked and immediately fled. Ming Yu wanted to dodge, but Hidden Weep's attack terrified her and she could not move at all. Although she was a hunter, she had grown up in a brothel, so how much combat experience could she have? Seeing the spear coming at him, Lu Yin grabbed Ming Yu and tossed her aside. He raised his hand to grab the spear, and his 9-lined battle force surged into the sky as 170 stacks vibrated. Hidden Weep's shield became unstable and he could not even grab the spear. Lu Yin shouted, "Get down here." He then exerted more strength in an attempt to pull Hidden Weep down. Hidden Weep released his grip, and the black spear was taken away by Lu Yin. He then grabbed the reins of his warhorse, causing it to raise its front hooves and stomp towards Lu Yin with a loud neigh. Lu Yin's eyes turned into runes as he stared at the warhorse's front hooves to weaken the rune lines. At the same time he struck out with his left palm. There was a thump as Hidden Weep was struck and knocked off his horse. The warhorse's front hooves slammed into Lu Yin's body, but he was only forced back a few steps. He then raised his hand and gathered 2 suns to attack the warhorse. "Thank you. The rest of my life is only for you. Thank you, brothers, for your support. Thank you, brothers, for your support. Thank you." Chapter 11:26. The warhorse's body burned with illusory black flames, but the twin suns were as hot as the sun. The twin suns bombarded the warhorse, causing it to whinny. The black flames on its body were suppressed, and the warhorse continuously retreated as it whimpered in pain. Hidden Weep wanted to return to his warhorse, but Lan Si's attack landed on his back. Lan Si's emptiness palm struck Hidden Weep's back and pushed him far away. Although it did not break through Shield 9's shield, it did push him further and further away from his warhorse. Hidden Weep's gaze turned cold and a terrifying amount of star energy swept out in all directions. He released his strength as an enlighter and raised his hands. Illusory black flames filled the sky and then pressed down. In the distance many cultivators fled in fear. Although the black flames did not pose a threat to Lu Yin and Lan Si, that was only because their defenses were too high. However, it was different for the others and it was enough to make them disappear. Little Black and Xiaobai ran further and further away. Mingyu also kept moving away and she watched the battle in shock. Hidden Weep displayed his strength as an enlighter, and both Lan Si and Lu Yin felt pressured. After all, he was an expert from Burial Garden, and since he dared to break through to the enlighter realm, it proved that he had accumulated enough resources. It was not that he was not a match for them as a hunter, but rather that he did not want to waste time. The warhorse whimpered as it was struck by the twin suns and blood splattered everywhere. Hidden Weep's voice was icy. Defeating 2 of the 10 arbiters in one go is enough to pave the way to becoming one of the 5 astral children. Lu Yin and Lan Si attacked at the same time, each with an emptiness palm. Hidden Weep's eyes widened but he did not defend himself. The shield around his body cracked and he was forced back by 10 steps. Lan Si followed up with another palm, not wanting to give Hidden Weep any time to react. However, this palm passed through Hidden Weep and struck the distant sea, causing it to cave in and form a palm print. Lan Si was shocked. What's going on? Hidden Weep's body was transparent, and his cold eyes swept past Lu Yin and then Lan Si. The book appeared above his head once again. There was a powerhouse in ancient times named Lu Guai. 11th Sword Source Split. Lu Yin and Lan Si's scalps tingled when they heard Hidden Weep's voice. 11th Sword of the 13 Swords? He could recreate the Lu family's 11th sword? How was that possible? No matter how they understood it, a sword light appeared from the strange book above Yu Qi's head. At that moment, Lu Yin felt a chill run down his spine as every cell in his body trembled. He subconsciously used the plan's secret art, causing the star chessboard to appear beneath his feet. In that instant the air, sea and star energy all became chess pieces. At the same time Lan Si and Hidden Weep were also chess pieces. There was also one more chess piece, the 11th sword. Lu Yin had no idea when the 11th sword had appeared or where it had come from. All he could do was move his body in an instant to avoid it, but there was no way he could save Lan Si. The sword light disappeared and the ocean was cut open. The sword chi slashed past Mingyu, Xiaohei and Xiaobai, making the 3 girls shiver. They didn't even dare to move. As for the cultivators further away, they were already stunned. They could not understand this sword move at all. Everyone looked at Hidden Weep and Hidden Weep looked in another direction where Lu Yin had appeared. Lan Si's eyes were slack as he slowly squatted down. Fresh blood flowed from his chest and dyed half of his body red. He had been directly struck by the 11th sword, and he had not been able to dodge it at all. Lan Si knew how terrifying the 11th sword was. As one of the 10 arbiters, he had long since wanted to challenge Lu Tianmu. He had seen the first 10 swords and he believed that he could withstand them with his innate gift and defense. However, he had not expected that he would not even be able to dodge the 11th sword. He had not even been able to see it before he was struck. The emptiness palm relied on speed, but the 11th sword had nothing to do with speed. It seemed to originate from the void. There was a thump as Lan Si fell into the sea, staining the surface red. Lu Yin waved his hand and scooped Lan Si up from the sea, tossing him to Xiao Bai and Xiao He. Take care of him. He then turned to look at Hidden Weep. Hidden Weep had been staring at Lu Yin the entire time. He had thought that the battle was over, but he had not expected Lu Yin to dodge the 11th sword. This was something that he had not expected. Hidden Weep had always been speculated about by others, and everyone had viewed him as a mysterious existence. Now Hidden Weep felt that he could not see through Lu Yin. Dodging the 11th sword was not something that could be done with the secret art of plan. Otherwise Sujio would have been invincible. This was an issue of awareness. Lu Yin had an extremely strong battle awareness, and this sort of awareness could be considered to be able to predict the future. Lu Yin was just a cruiser, so how could he have such awareness to dodge the 11th sword? Furthermore, the 11th sword had been unleashed with the strength of an enlighter. Lu Yin looked at Hidden Weep. You can borrow the strength of a dead person? What kind of existence is Burial Garden? The book above Hidden Weep's head flipped as black flames burned around his body. In the distance, a warhorse galloped over. He leaped onto the warhorse and looked at Lu Yin. Burial Garden's existence is not something that you can comprehend. However, your ability to dodge the 11th sword was beyond my expectations, and you are qualified to be my opponent. Unfortunately, you will lose in the end. Lu Yin frowned. This person was too troublesome and his innate gift was too strange. He could even borrow the Lu family's 13 swords, and he could also ignore the empty palm. How had he done it? If he could ignore the empty palm, then why hadn't he done so from the start? 7th bro, you have to get the progenitor blood. I beg you, the monkey said solemnly. Lu Yin's eyes flashed and he stared at Hidden Weep warily as he slowly clenched his fists. In the distance, at the foot of a mountain, Shangqing looked up and slowly ascended the mountain. At the bottom of the mountain was the defeated Sujio, Ku Lei, Mingguang and the others. The crying lady had ascended the mountain at the same time. Tai Yuanjun, Qin Guangshan and the others had also been defeated. To her, these people were meaningless, and the so-called competition between the 5 astral children was just a formality. In a corner of the mountain and sea realm, a descendant of the Xia family was participating in the competition. His name was Xia Kong. At this moment, Xia Kong was lying on the surface of the sea, looking up at the golden platform above his head. His eyes slowly closed and his body gradually disappeared. Heaven's emergence Mavis ascended the mountain, and even Tai Yishan could not stop her. However, just like Xia Kong, Xia Tian's body was also gradually disappearing. Qiushi ascended the mountain, while Hui Santong and the others had already been defeated. Star Sibyl stood at the foot of the mountain, her eyes flickering. No one knew what she was calculating. 5 mountains, 5 directions. The battles in the other directions had already ended, and only Hidden Weep's side had encountered an accident. However, this accident was just an interlude that would soon be over. I've heard of your name, Lu Yin. You're the one who unified the outer verse and defeated 2 of the 10 arbiters in a row. Among your peers, you're considered invincible. If I hadn't broken through to the Enlighter realm, it would have been very difficult for me to fight you. But today your fate has already been decided. Hidden Weep slowly spoke, his tone still as sinister as before. As he spoke, the banner that he had been carrying on his back suddenly melted, transforming into a strange force field that surrounded his body. In the next moment, Hidden Weep's entire aura changed and even the sky darkened. Lu Yin's pupils shrank. Hidden Weep's rune lines had originally been greater than his, but at this moment, they had actually increased dramatically. The reason why he had been able to fight against Hidden Weep was because the Aeon Evolution scripture had continuously weakened his opponent's rune lines. Now that Hidden Weep's power level had skyrocketed, the weakened rune lines were no longer enough to make up for the disparity in power. The warhorse whinnied and Hidden Weep pulled on the reins, causing it to charge towards Lu Yin. Lu Yin raised a hand, but it was empty. The illusory black flames on Hidden Weep's body distorted the void, and the empty palm viciously slammed into the flames, causing them to disperse. However, it was only a small portion. This was the difference between them. If Hidden Weep had not broken through to the Enlighter realm, then it would have been impossible for him to easily block Lu Yin's empty palm. But now, Lu Yin was able to rely on the difference in their realms to forcefully make up for the difference and forcefully withstand the attack. The black flames transformed into a spear that stabbed out, and the tip of the spear emitted a black light that caused Lu Yin's scalp to turn numb. His figure flickered and disappeared. Hidden Weep's eyes turned cold and the black flames swept out in all directions, drowning out the space visible to the naked eye. Countless black lights flickered like stars in the night sky. The moment Lu Yin reappeared, numerous black lights flashed past him. Even though Lu Yin dodged several of them, he was still struck by dozens of them in a row, which caused his fates and to enter his body. At the same time, his 9-line battle force almost collapsed. Lu Yin crashed into the sea with a thump. Hidden Weep raised his spear and stabbed down, the tip of the spear emitting a terrifying black light. At the bottom of the sea, Lu Yin looked up and waved his left hand, activating the secret art. The black spear was forcefully redirected, as Hidden Weep had not expected Lu Yin to be able to redirect his attack. The tip of the spear stabbed into the sea, but at the last moment Hidden Weep suddenly froze. The black light from the tip of the spear transformed into ripples that spread out from the bottom of the sea. Lu Yin had a bad premonition and he immediately rose to the surface. The next moment, endless black flames ignited the sea. In front of Lu Yin, Hidden Weep pulled back his spear and stabbed out again. There was nowhere to run, and even if he dodged with his speed, he would still be incinerated by the endless black flames. In the distance, outside of the black flames, Xiao Bai and Little Black supported Lan Si as they watched in horror. Mingyu was shocked as this was one of the peak battles in the mountain and sea realm. When he saw Hidden Weep's spear stab towards him, Lu Yin's gaze hardened, and he raised a finger and tapped out. His 9-lined battle force wrapped around his finger, and his domain compressed his spiritual force onto his finger. His fingertip contained overlaying stacks, and the true scripture of Ian evolution weakened his opponent's rune lines. This was the battle technique that Lu Yin had fused with the Skybridge, and it could be considered his unique battle technique. He had named it Seventh Bro's Finger. Seventh Bro's Finger contains spiritual force, physical strength, domain and battle techniques. Hidden Weep was shocked by this one finger. His spear had blocked overlaying stacks and 9-line battle force, but it had not been able to block the spiritual force at the same time. Lu Yin's spiritual force was enough to withstand Night King Zhenwu's Night King Heaven-splitting technique. There was no one in his generation whose spiritual force surpassed Night King Zhenwu's. Even though Hidden Weep's spiritual force was not weak, he still fainted for a moment. Lu Yin had been waiting for this moment. He raised a hand and struck out with an empty palm. The palm descended and pierced through the black flames before passing through Hidden Weep and crashing into the sea. Lu Yin immediately retreated and stared at Hidden Weep. What was going on? How was this person able to avoid his empty palm? Was it an innate gift? No, his innate gift was that book. On the other side, Hidden Weep looked up at Lu Yin. Perhaps you are the strongest below the 5 astral children. Even Lu Tianmu, who is also one of the 10 arbiters, might not be your opponent. If we were both enlighters, then I might not be your opponent. But today the results will not change. Lu Yin was helpless as he could not defeat this person. He had even used Seventh Bro's Finger, but he still could not win. He could only endure. Chapter 1127. Believe it or not, if I can't beat you, you can't beat me either, Lu Yin said. Hidden Weep looked at him. Is that so? The book appeared above her head once more. When he saw the book, Lu Yin felt a chill run down his spine. Who knew whose innate gift this person would borrow? The 11th sword had already left a shadow in his heart. Because of their battle with Hidden Weep, neither of them dared to be distracted. Neither of them noticed that the monkey who had been attached to Lu Yin's right arm had left. The monkey had always been a shadow, and at this moment the sea was burning with black flames, so no one could tell that it was a shadow that was swimming within the black flames. Although the black flames were ineffective against Lu Yin and Lan Si, they were still exceptionally powerful. Logically speaking, an explorer should not be able to withstand the flames. However, the monkey ignored the black flames and headed towards a distant mountain. It transformed into a shadow and climbed the mountain without anyone noticing. Its desire for progenitor blood had reached its peak. Outside the mountain and sea realm, A group of older powerhouses watched the battle between Hidden Weep and Lu Yin. Mu En sighed. This brat can actually fight against an enlighter from the Garden of Burial. He's only been cultivating for a dozen years. His innate gift is too high. Haizid Shenwei was pleased. He's an in-name disciple of my everlasting island. Yuan Ku smiled. He's a temporary disciple of my serious sect. Not far away, Xia Meng looked at Lu Yin. The timing isn't right. Give him a few more years and aside from 2 or 3 people no one else will be his match. It's not just him. The 10 arbiters of the Innerverse aren't weak either. Lan Si can also fight against an enlighter from the Garden of Burial. The 10 arbiters of the Innerverse aren't bad, and they're only lacking in terms of realm and foundation, Muen said. This time it's not their stage, Haizid Shenwei said regretfully. Within the mountain and sea realm, Hidden Weep slowly said, there was an ancient powerhouse named Lu Guai. He used the 11th sword. Lu Yin's expression changed. It was the 11th sword again. He subconsciously used the planned secret art to escape, but his original location was cut open once more. The sea was cut open and the black flames were split in 2. When Lu Yin reappeared, the neighing of a warhorse could be heard from behind him, and he felt a sharp pain in his back. Hidden Weep had appeared behind him and the tip of her spear had pierced his back. His 9-lined battle force cracked open and then exploded. Hidden Weep's spear had pierced Lu Yin's back, causing blood to spill out. Black flames spread along the wound, attempting to incinerate him. Lu Yin turned around and struck out with his palm, emptiness palm piercing through Quiet Weep once more. Silent Weep swept out and smashed into Lu Yin's body. Lu Yin could only use his arms to block the attack and he was sent flying into the sea, both of his arms broken. Atop the mountain, the monkey looked back and saw that Lu Yin was being suppressed. Just a little longer, 7th bro. I'll come and help you. Just a little longer. He then rushed towards the cracked mountain peak. Progenitor blood, progenitor blood. Quiet Weep's action of stopping the others from ascending the mountain was equivalent to helping Ghost Monkey, allowing him to ascend the mountain without any hindrance. Other than the mountain itself, there were no other obstacles. The resistance of the mountain itself was completely ineffective against it. In the distance, Mingyu felt helpless. Lu Yin was still not the Burial Garden's successor's match. As long as the Burial Garden's successor grasped an opportunity, he would be instantly defeated. The gap between them was just too great. Xiao Bai and Xiao He were anxious. Lan Si regained consciousness and looked into the distance. How is it? Mingyu pursed her lips. Lu Yin lost. Lan Si was helpless as his opponent was an enlighter. If Lu Yin had broken through to the hunter realm, then he might have been able to put up a fight, but he was only a cruiser. With a difference of 2 realms, as long as his opponent could land a hit on him, then it was normal for him to lose. At the bottom of the sea, Lu Yin's back was in intense pain, but he gritted his teeth and persevered. The black flames spread to the bottom of the sea and turned into a black ray that swept through the area. Lu Yin no longer planned on fighting head-on, and all he needed to do now was retreat. He had fought with Xianxia, the Tearing Lady, Qiushi, and now Quiet Weep. The Tearing Lady, Qiushi, and Quiet Weep were all enlighters, and Xianxia was definitely one as well. Now, for enlighters had appeared, and Lu Yin was not a match for any of them. These people were the true peak of the Neoverse. Quiet Weep rode on his warhorse and stood on the surface of the sea, looking down at Lu Yin. Lu Yin was constantly dodging and his eyes narrowed. He could see that Lu Yin wanted to retreat, but he could not let him leave so easily. This person was extremely powerful and dealing with him would be the same as dealing with Lu Tianmu. Lu Yin needed to be severely injured or else it might bring about unexpected changes. In the distance on a tall mountain, the monkey was unobstructed and he was getting closer and closer to the progenitor blood. At the bottom of the sea, Lu Yin's nerves were taut as he charged into the distance, but Quiet Weep had no intention of letting him go. There was an ancient powerhouse known as the Army, and his innate gift was the cage. The moment he spoke, the black flames that had spread throughout the sea suddenly changed. They were no longer flames, but rather a cage that gradually shrank as they tried to trap Lu Yin within. Lu Yin gritted his teeth and 520 stars revolved around him before exploding. The power of the explosion of so many stars tore the cage apart. Outside the mountain and sea realm, Elder Yunko was shocked. This kid had actually cultivated to 520 stars. This was too shocking. What kind of innate gift was this? It was not just Elder Yuanke. Everyone else was shocked as well. Lu Yin represented everlasting Sky Island, which meant that even if he had learned the serious technique, it would not be too profound. But now he had actually cultivated 520 stars in one go, which shocked everyone. Xia Meng looked at Elder Yuanke in amazement. The serious sect is really generous. Elder Yuanke was speechless as even he did not know. Xianxia Wei's lips curled up as he knew. After the battle for the Star Tower had begun, everyone had been focused on their own disciples. Of course he would keep an eye on Lu Yin and Xiaobai. Lu Yin had displayed 520 stars of the serious technique before, and while no one else had seen it, Xianxia Wei had seen it. He had been shocked at the time, but he had not said anything. Now everyone was shocked. When he saw the serious technique circulating around Lu Yin's body, Xianxia Wei recalled the words of serious sect master Yuan Qiong. He looked at Lu Yin strangely. Was this kid really fated with the serious sect? In the mountain and sea realm, Lu Yin had used the serious technique to break through the cage, but he was still not Quiet Weep's match. Quiet Weep's spear pierced through the void and the black light headed straight for Lu Yin. Lu Yin used the secret art to dodge again, but he did not retaliate and instead fled into the distance. He could not hit this person at all, so it was meaningless. Fighting against this person was even more frustrating than fighting against the Prime Clear One. The Prime Clear One had relied on the ancestral qi of the three Yangs to forcefully resist, but this person did not even need to resist. Lu Yin wanted to escape, but Quiet Weep had no intention of letting him. She continued to pursue him. Fortunately, Lu Yin was fast enough and he also had the plan and secret arts. Even if he could not defeat Quiet Weep, he could still escape. At that moment, the progenitor's blood shone brightly above the mountain. It had originally only dyed a small portion of the mountain and sea realm red, but now it dyed the entire realm red. Besides the red light, there was also a black shadow that enveloped Quiet Weep, Lu Yin and the others. It was like a black cloud that covered the sun. Everyone looked over and saw the ghost monkey reach for the progenitor's blood. Quiet Weep's eyes narrowed and she shouted, "Stop." Her spear pierced through the air, piercing towards the monkey. The monkey panicked. Seventh bro. Lu Yin did not know when the monkey had left him, but no matter what the monkey's goal was, he could not allow Quiet Weep to kill him. He waved his hand and used the secret art to redirect Quiet Weep's spear. Quiet Weep waved her hand and black flames swept towards the mountain. Lu Yin raised his hand and instantly struck out with more than 10 hollow palms to disperse the black flames. Quiet Weep was furious, but she did not have the time to deal with Lu Yin. The book appeared above her head once more. There was an ancient powerhouse named Lu Guai. 11th Sword, Sword Splitter. The moment the book appeared, Lu Yin raised a finger and pointed at it. Seventh bro pointed at it as well. He did not attack Quiet Weep but rather the book. Attacking Quiet Weep was meaningless. Sword light flashed as it slashed towards the mountain and towards the monkey. The monkey was aghast as it was about to touch the progenitor's blood. Suddenly the sword light disappeared. The 11th sword had disappeared just as it was about to hit the monkey. Lu Yin destroyed the book with a single finger. He could not fight against the 11th sword, but he could break Quiet Weep's innate gift. Quiet Weep was furious and she turned around to sweep her spear at Lu Yin, who spat out a mouthful of blood and fell back into the sea. Quiet Weep turned back to look at the mountain, but at that moment, Ghost Monkey grabbed the progenitor's blood and swallowed it under everyone's shocked and puzzled gazes. At this moment not only were Quiet Weep and the others stunned, but even Mu En and the others outside the mountain and sea realm. They could tell that Ghost Monkey was Lu Yin's tamed beast, but they had not paid much attention to him when he had grabbed the progenitor's blood. Lu Yin had been defeated and the blood would definitely return to Quiet Weep. They had promised Burial Garden that there would be no accidents. But who would have thought that Ghost Monkey would actually swallow the progenitor's blood? That was a progenitor's weapon, and even an emissary would not be able to withstand the might of a progenitor's blood. How could an explorer's tamed beast swallow it? How could it dare to swallow it? Ghost Monkey's actions made everyone question their own lives. Everyone was stunned and no one made a move. They all looked at Ghost Monkey wanting to see if there were any changes. Mu En and the others stared at Ghost Monkey, as no one had ever swallowed progenitor's blood since ancient times. Even the astral beast domain's top experts did not dare to do so, as doing so would be courting death. Lu Yin's tamed beast was done for. Lu Yin opened his eyes at the bottom of the sea and gasped for breath. He spat out a mouthful of blood and then leaped to the surface. He had not seen Ghost Monkey swallow the progenitor's blood, and when he saw that Ghost Monkey was still on the mountain, he shouted, "Come down!" Lu Yin's shout startled Quiet Weep and the others. She stared at Ghost Monkey. Why wasn't he dead yet? Atop the mountain, Ghost Monkey had turned into a shadow that was constantly twisting about. Sometimes it was black, sometimes it was red, and it looked rather strange. Quiet Weep did not make a move and she just stared at it. Lu Yin felt that something was strange and his ears twitched. In the distance, Lan Si transmitted a message to him, telling him what had just happened. Lu Yin was stunned. That damned monkey swallowed progenitor's blood? He suddenly recalled what had happened in the Outerverse border warehouse. That damned monkey had wanted to obtain half progenitor's blood, and he had even said that Ghost Monkey's bloodline could rely on absorbing half progenitor's blood to increase their strength to the hunter realm. But that was just half progenitor's blood, while this was progenitor's blood. For an explorer realm astral beast to be able to absorb progenitor's blood was a joke. It was just as laughable as a normal person being able to instantly kill an explorer. But such a laughable thing had happened right before their eyes, and it had truly happened. It had overturned countless people's worldviews. Thank you for your support, brothers. Follow the Wind is working hard to write. Chapter 11:28. Lu Yin's eyes flickered as he stared at the monkey's shadow. He had never trusted the monkey and he had even used his innate gift to block it. The main reason was that the monkey knew too many secrets. A person's knowledge was related to their environment and it was impossible for them to know so much from tomb raiding. Even though Lu Yin was wary of the monkey, it had never been a threat to him, so he didn't really care. However, the monkey's sudden change left him at a loss as to what to do. The overbearingness of a tamed beast lay in the fact that if he died, the tamed beast would die as well. However, if the tamed beast died, the tamed beast would be fine and at most he would be severely injured. This was the beast taming technique. The monkey had reversed the beast taming technique and forcefully become Lu Yin's tamed beast, which was why Lu Yin was most worried about it. He just hoped that nothing bad would happen to the monkey. Who knew what the consequences of reversing the beast taming technique would be? Even if the monkey became an enemy, it would be better than dying and causing harm to Lu Yin. In the mountain and sea realm, a figure appeared on a golden stage. While Lu Yin and the rest were looking at the monkey's shadow, Xianxia appeared on another golden stage. Xianxia's expression was calm, and 3 streams of energy surrounded him. He looked like an immortal. To him, climbing a mountain and stepping onto a stage was normal. Next to him was Feather Mavis. Next, the Tearing Lady and Qiushi also stepped onto the golden stage. The mountain and sea realm was huge, but the golden screen magnified the size of the mountain and sea realm and everyone could see it. Hidden Weep looked up and scanned the surroundings. His gaze turned cold as he looked at Lu Yin and stabbed out with his spear. He did not want to waste any more time. The black spear stabbed out, its tip flickering with black light. While Lu Yin was still in a daze, the spear pierced through his heart, causing blood to drip down the tip. Hidden Weep's gaze turned cold. Don't blame me. You can only blame yourself for blocking my path. His spear trembled as he sent Lu Yin flying. Hidden Weep retracted his spear and was about to ascend the mountain when he suddenly felt that something was amiss. Was Lu Yin really that easy to stab? He slowly turned around and saw that Lu Yin was still standing there, looking at him with a strange expression. Yu Weep's face sank and he closed his eyes and pulled on the reins. The warhorse neighed as black flames shot up into the sky, forming a fiery tornado that swept across the surface of the sea. There was a loud bang as space was torn apart, and Yu Weep saw Lu Yin once more. However, Lu Yin was already right in front of him. Yu Qi coldly snorted. It was an illusion. Someone had used an illusion on him. Lu Yin's palm pierced through Quiet Weep, but it wasn't just the palm imprint. His entire body had also pierced through Quiet Weep. Quiet Weep turned around and stabbed out with the tip of her spear. Lu Yin dodged and then reached out to grab the spear, but this time it was not as easy as the first time. Quiet Weep had used her strength as an enlighter, and both her physical body and star energy had been greatly enhanced. With the addition of the War Banner's support, even Lu Yin's physical strength was unable to firmly grab onto the spear. However, what he wanted was not to grab the spear but to touch the object. As the spear was caught, Lu Yin's other hand struck out with an empty palm. Yu Weeping loosened her grip, and the emptiness palm once again pierced through his body. Lu Yin's eyes lit up. Sure enough, there was a prerequisite for this person to become transparent, and that was that Lu Yin would not be able to touch the object. Once someone touched the object, they would not be able to become transparent. Quiet Weep's warhorse raised its front hooves and viciously stomped at Lu Yin. Lu Yin did not move from his spot, and the warhorse's hooves stomped him into the seabed. Quiet Weep immediately felt that something was amiss, as it was another illusion. Black flames surged from his body and shattered the illusion once again. He suddenly turned to look at the tall mountain and discovered that the ghost monkey's shadow had disappeared. The ghost monkey was the one who had used the illusion on Quiet Weep. When the astral beast domain had sent people to participate in the tournament of the strongest, the monkey had been one of the candidates. However, because it had become Lu Yin's tamed beast, it had been unable to participate. As one of the Astral Beast Domain's Spiritual Academy's 5 Academy Masters, the monkey's innate gift was top-notch. Few people of the same generation could break free from its illusions. Although it was not as mesmerizing as Night's End Daybreak, it was still enough to pose a threat to enemies. Previously, the monkey had not been able to help Lu Yin because Lu Yin had advanced too quickly, and the monkey had not been able to keep up with his realm. His opponents were also too powerful. Now, however, the monkey had broken through to the hunter realm with the help of the progenitor's blood, and it was strong enough to fight alongside Lu Yin. The monkey's most important ability was not its illusion attacks, but its innate gift of shadows. By the time Quiet Weep realized that the monkey had used the illusion on him, it was already too late. The monkey had already turned into a shadow and merged with his own shadow. The moment the monkey merged with Quiet Weep's shadow, Lu Yin attacked with an empty palm strike. This palm strike landed squarely on Quiet Weep. Quiet Weep was knocked off his horse and fell into the sea. Lu Yin attacked again, slamming Quiet Weep's entire body into the seabed. Quiet Weep had never imagined that he would be beaten so miserably here. Lu Yin's attack methods were ever-changing, and he even had 2 secret techniques. He also had all sorts of strange attacks, and he even had a tamed beast. Even Quiet Weep found this inconceivable. No matter how mysterious the burial garden was, it was not as mysterious as Lu Yin. In particular, this person's physical body was so powerful that he was practically a monster. Otherwise, that spear strike from before would have ended the battle. Even Lu Tianmu could not block a single spear strike from Lu Yin. Aside from the other 4 enlighters in the mountain and sea realm, it was very difficult for anyone else to block a single spear strike from Lu Yin, not to mention the sword sect's 11th sword. The monkey's shadow merged with Quiet Weep, making it impossible for him to remain transparent. He looked up and Lu Yin's palm struck him again. Quiet Weep was knocked to the bottom of the sea by the consecutive palm strikes, and he could not endure it any longer and spat out a mouthful of blood. Outside the mountain and sea realm, Mu En shook his head. This generation's inheritors are still too weak. How can they stand at the peak just by relying on formless battle techniques and willpower? Their innate gifts are very powerful and they can collect the innate gifts of the dead to use, but there are also many limitations. Haizid Shinwei sighed. Actually, he's not weak at all. Looking at the past competitions between the 5 Scions of the Stars, only the era of the 4 captains of the Death Legion could compare to him. However, there are just too many geniuses in this generation. Now I'm just curious about that kid called Lu Yin. How did he cultivate? When we were his age, we would have been considered pretty good if we had even half of his strength. That's enough to qualify for the 5 Scions of the Stars, an elder said. Mu En slowly replied, this generation's 5 Scions of the Stars should be the true peak of their generation. There's even an unsolvable 3 Suns ancestral chi, which is really unfair to the others. Any one of the 10 arbiters would have been able to become one of the 5 Scions of the Stars in any other era. What a pity. Xiameng looked at Muin. Without the 6th mainland's invasion, no matter how strong they are, they don't have the qualifications to compete. Besides, the 5 Scions of the Stars have already been eliminated. Muin did not say anything and just quietly watched the screen. Haizid Shinwei had a helpless expression. The 5 Scions of the Stars had already been eliminated. He looked at Lu Yin on the screen. So what if he won? What awaited him was an even more despairing opponent. In the mountain and sea realm, the black flames on the surface of the sea gradually dissipated. In the distance, Ming Yu and the rest watched anxiously. Lu Yin stood on the surface of the sea and looked down at the seabed. He could see that Hidden Weep's rune lines had weakened significantly. So what if he had broken through to the Enlighter realm? Emptiness Palm did not depend on one's realm. Once it struck, whether one could withstand it or not depended on one's defense. Hidden Weep had broken through to the Enlighter realm, and his attack power could easily exceed 300,000. His defense was even more unbreakable, and it made it impossible for others to attack him. However, once his transparent battle technique was broken through, then this person's defense would not be able to withstand the Emptiness Palm. If this person had not broken through to the Enlighter realm, then Lu Yin guessed that a single Emptiness Palm would have been enough to blast his organs out. His defense was even weaker than Lan Si's or Night King Zhenwu's. This person's weakness was too obvious. Above the sea, a shadow slowly merged into Lu Yin's arm. It was the ghost monkey. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. You weren't lying. You can use the blood of a half-ancestor or even a progenitor to infinitely increase your strength. You actually broke through from the Explorer realm to the Hunter realm. The monkey fell silent for a moment and then said, "Seventh bro, you've never trusted me, right?" Lu Yin did not deny it as he did not need to. Today he would make things clear to the monkey. If the monkey could not gain his trust, then he would rather erase him. Breaking through from the Explorer realm to the Hunter realm was too terrifying. Who knew if the damned monkey would break through to the Emissary realm the next time? Furthermore, the damned monkey had absorbed the blood of a progenitor, so it was impossible for him to completely absorb it all at once. The monkey's strength might increase even further in the short term. Seventh bro, my name is indeed the ghost monkey, but there has never been a ghost monkey bloodline in the astral beast domain. From ancient times until now I've been the only ghost monkey. Lu Yin listened quietly. And my name comes from progenitor Wuxiang. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed and he was shocked. What did you say? The monkey sighed. I know that it's hard for you to believe, but this is the truth. My appearance was an accident, and I was born from the shadow of progenitor Wuxiang's blood. My consciousness has always been with progenitor Wuxiang since I first appeared. In other words, I was created by progenitor Wuxiang. Lu Yin frowned in disbelief. You were created by progenitor Wuxiang? You can't believe it, right? That's why I didn't say anything before. I was afraid that you wouldn't believe me even if I told you, and that you would treat me as an enemy and erase me. But now I have no choice. I went from the Explorer realm to the Hunter realm in an instant. If I don't tell you now, then given how cautious you are, you might erase me. There's nothing I can do about it. Lu Yin suppressed his shock and asked, what makes you think that I'll believe you? Aside from life forms created by progenitors, who else can directly break through to the Cruiser realm? Who else can absorb the blood of a progenitor as an explorer? Only me. Throughout history, no other life form has been able to directly absorb the blood of a progenitor like me. That's because I was born from progenitor Wuxiang's blood, so I can directly absorb the blood of a progenitor, the monkey said proudly. Lu Yin fell into deep thought and did not say anything. Seventh bro, do you remember when I told you that the astral beast domain's celestial ice phoenixes were my harem? That's true. When I was born, progenitor Wuxiang was delighted and designated the celestial ice phoenixes as my harem. Only progenitor Wuxiang, the ancestors of the celestial ice phoenixes, and myself know about this. It was even recorded in the clan's history. If not for the accident that happened later, I would have long since become one of the astral beast domain's oldest ancestors, the monkey said proudly. Chapter 1129. When he heard the monkey's words, Lu Yin was curious. What accident? The monkey sighed. There are many things that I can't remember clearly. I only vaguely remember that I was very powerful at my peak, but when I regained consciousness, countless years had passed. I can remember bits and pieces of events from long ago, but I've forgotten most of them. Then where did you learn about the various strange things in the universe during this time? Lu Yin asked. The monkey replied, Seventh bro, I'm not lying to you about this. I'm a shadow and I was created from progenitor Wuxiang's blood. I'm practically immortal, so I often search for hidden tombs. I know many things that ordinary people don't know about. Searching for tombs isn't just a hobby, but also because I want to find the truth. The truth? Lu Yin was puzzled. The monkey answered, I want to find progenitor Wuxiang's tomb. I want to know why progenitor Wuxiang disappeared in ancient times. Is he dead or alive? Or is he sealed in ice? I want to know what happened long ago. Lu Yin remained silent. He could not believe the monkey's words, but he could not deny them either. Based on his personality, he should have erased the monkey since he was a potential threat. However, after interacting with the monkey for so long, Lu Yin was not a heartless person. He could not erase the monkey based on groundless guesses. Lu Yin's thoughts were complicated and he did not know what to do. At that moment, Hidden Weep charged out of the ocean, panting heavily as his warhorse galloped over from the distance. Hidden Weep stared at Lu Yin and the book appeared above his head once more. The monkey transformed into a shadow and charged towards Hidden Weep. Hidden Weep saw the black flames burning, but they could not damage the shadow at all. He could not believe that the shadow could withstand his attack. As the monkey merged back into his shadow, the black flames around Hidden Weep's body disappeared, and he calmly looked at Lu Yin. "You win." Lu Yin relaxed his clenched fists. He had won, but it still felt a little unreal. Before the monkey had become a hunter, Lu Yin had not been able to find any way to deal with Hidden Weep. Even though he knew that the monkey had obvious weaknesses, he could not break through them. Back in the astral beast domain, Tianho had an unbreakable strength and even Starsabil had been defeated. Hidden Weep was even more so. Burial Garden's battle techniques and secret techniques were very mysterious, and Lu Yin had already admitted defeat. However, the monkey had broken through to the hunter realm and transformed into a shadow to withstand Hidden Weep's attacks. He had even broken through Hidden Weep's unbreakable translucency and reversed the battle, allowing Lu Yin to win. Although Lu Yin had been the leader of this battle, Ghost Monkey had helped out at the most critical moment. Battle force, domain, spiritual force, physical body, battle techniques, secret techniques and even beast taming. Congratulations, Lu Yin. You've won. You're one of the 5 astral children. Hidden Weep's tone was low, but there was no unwillingness or resentment in her voice. Lu Yin clasped his hands behind his back and looked at Quiet Weep with admiration. You're really strong. Quiet Weep mounted her horse. Of course. It's a pity that I ran into you. To be honest, your tamed beast is very powerful. Without it, you wouldn't have been able to beat me. The monkey fused into Lu Yin's arm. 7th bro, we won. Lu Yin's heart skipped a beat. Us, is it us? He sighed. That's right, we're one. No matter how much fear or speculation there was, it was impossible to erase the feelings we had for each other over so many years. Regardless of whether or not he believed the monkey's words, Lu Yin could not erase it. The monkey had long since become a part of Lu Yin's body. Perhaps one day he would be able to separate the monkey and allow it to regain its freedom. Lu Yin looked at Quiet Weep. Even if I beat you, it doesn't mean that I'm one of the 5 astral children. Quiet Weep turned around on her horse and rode off in another direction. Since you've defeated me, you should be one of the 5 astral children unless there's someone who's unwilling to accept it. Her body then gradually disappeared, transforming into an illusory black flame that dissipated. In the distance, Xiao Bai and Little Black arrived, supporting Lan Si. Lu Yin, you won. Amazing. Xiao Bai exclaimed. Lan Si was shocked as he had not expected Lu Yin to win. His opponent was an Enlighter's successor from the Burial Garden, and his secret techniques and battle techniques were not weak. His innate gift was even more abnormal and he had even fused with Lu Tianmu. If someone like that could be defeated, then Lu Yin had improved yet again. Lu Yin smiled bitterly and looked up. Had he won? There were more than just 5 astral children. What about the other 4? What about the Crying Lady? During his battle with Quiet Weep, Xianxia, the Crying Lady, Qiushi, and Yuhua Mavis had all ascended the golden stage and stood on the stage that represented the 5 astral children. At that moment, Lu Yin had guessed that the 5th golden stage was waiting for Quiet Weep. All 5 of them were Enlighters, and he did not believe that it was a coincidence. Lu Yin could only think of one possibility, which was that the 5 astral children had already been determined. Quiet Weep's words had further confirmed this. Defeating Quiet Weep was equivalent to replacing her. At that moment, even though Lu Yin felt uncomfortable, he knew that the outcome had already been decided. He, the 10 arbiters and even the others from the Neoverse were just foils for the other 5. Since the 5 astral children had already been determined, then if he replaced Quiet Weep, then the other 4 might retaliate. The moment he looked up, he was already prepared to face the other 4's attacks. Defeating Quiet Weep could only be attributed to Quiet Weep's obvious weakness, which had been exposed by Ghost Monkey. However, the other 4 were not so easy to deal with. Xianxia had 3 ancestral qi. The crying lady had her innate gift and heartless sorrow, and Qiushi had her serious technique and secret technique. Although Yuhua Mavis had not encountered them before, she was definitely not weak. None of the 4 were easy to deal with. Lu Yin did not have much hope of becoming one of the 5 astral children unless he was given star essence and allowed to enter the time-stop space to cultivate until he became a hunter. However, at this moment the crying lady was not on the golden stage. It was not just Lu Yin. Xianxia, Qiushi, and Yuhua Mavis all looked in her direction. She had left the stage. A man appeared at the foot of Hugan Mountain and looked up to meet the crying lady. The crying lady had left the mountain because of this man. I thought that you had been kicked out of the mountain and sea realm by Xianxia Xiajuyo. The man who had appeared at the foot of the mountain was Xiajuyo. Ever since he had entered the mountain and sea realm, he had been repeatedly defeated by powerful enemies. He had been ridiculed as the weakest descendant of the Xia family since ancient times, and he had been seen as a symbol of the Xia family's decline. However, such a person had caused the crying lady to become solemn and even fearful. The current Xiajuyo was completely different from when he had encountered the Xianxia, and the biggest difference was his realm. He had also broken through to the Enlightened realm. The Hall of Honor wants 2 of the 5 astral children. Isn't that a bit too much? Xiajuyo's tone was relaxed, as if he had not been the one who had been defeated so many times before. The crying lady's tone was icy. Try and stop them if you can. Xiajuyo shrugged, and with a light tap of his feet, his body vanished. The crying lady's body also vanished. There was a loud boom as star energy collided, causing the void to distort and crack open. Terrifying star energy shockwaves whizzed out and swept out in all directions. Even the surface of the sea was overturned. The 2 walked past each other, and Xiajuyo suddenly clutched his heart as a trace of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. He turned around and heard 4 words, "Heartless sorrow for autumn." The crying lady turned around and stared at Xiajuyo. Ripples appeared in the air and spread out, enveloping Xiajuyo within. This was her innate gift of hypnosis. Xiajuyo's eyes narrowed and he suddenly clapped his hands together. The crying lady appeared in front of him and he struck out with a cold palm. Netherforged palm, which pierced through the crying lady. He had been hypnotized and the crying lady in front of him was a fake. Behind him he heard 4 more words, "Heartless sorrow for autumn." Xiajuyo coughed up blood, unable to understand where this attack had come from. Xiajuyo had been struck, and the crying lady had wanted to continue attacking. However, her pupils suddenly shrank and her back turned cold. At some point in time, another palm had appeared behind her. It was Xiajuyo's netherforged palm, and Xiajuyo was clearly in front of her. The crying lady's back gradually froze, and even with her star energy, it was difficult to dissolve. She looked in front of her in confusion and then at Xiajuyo. When did this happen? Xiajuyo wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. It's an innate gift. You can't figure it out. He then charged at the crying lady and struck out with another netherforged palm. The crying lady was extremely wary of the netherforged palm. The palm imprint on her back could not be dissolved, and it even gradually froze over. This greatly affected her ability to attack, and when she saw Xiajuyo's next attack, the ripples on her body continued to spread. Xiajuyo shook his head. Hypnosis is indeed a powerful innate gift, but it depends on who you're using it on. He then struck out with his netherforged palm, not just once but dozens of times, breaking through the void. Heartless sorrow for autumn. The crying lady's voice rang out, and Xiajuyo's expression changed as his heart throbbed with pain. He had been hit again. What was this? The crying lady's heartless sorrow for autumn was just as unbreakable as Hidden Weep's transparency. Unfortunately, Xiajuyo wasn't as lucky as Lu Yin and was able to break through it. However, he didn't need to, as the crying lady was also affected by the netherforged palm. Even though the crying lady immediately retreated after the attack, she was still struck in the shoulder by the netherforged palm. Just like her back, her shoulder gradually froze over. Her face paled as she stared at Xiajuyo in fear. Xiajuyo could withstand her attacks multiple times, but the netherforged palm would not allow her to do so. She couldn't break through the ice. Xiajuyo raised a hand and it was still the netherforged palm. However, he didn't use it this time. Instead, a dark light condensed in his palm and transformed into a long blade. He looked at the crying lady. Three forms. Blade intent. The crying lady's eyes narrowed. The Xia family's three forms? The seven courts Xia family had inherited the three forms since ancient times. Each strike would be stacked on top of the previous, and each strike would be twice as powerful as the previous strike. The third strike was practically invincible within the same realm, and it was one of the strongest battle techniques in the Neoverse. Although it wasn't as powerful as the Three Suns' ancestral chi, it was still one of the top battle techniques. The more invincible a technique was, the harder it was to learn. No one had been able to learn the Three Suns' ancestral chi for 100,000 years, and the Xia family's three forms hadn't been learned for tens of thousands of years. Many people had even forgotten about them, but now Xiajuyo was using them. The crying lady didn't even think about it as she pointed a hand at Xiajuyo. Exile. This was one of the Hall of Honor's secret techniques, exile. It could banish the target to an extremely far distance. It was an attack that couldn't be countered. The Xia family's three forms made the crying lady wary. She wanted to use a secret technique to exile Xiajuyo to interrupt the condensation of the three forms. Exile was a secret technique that couldn't be seen or touched, but it truly existed. However, Xiajuyo didn't move at all. The crying lady's eyes narrowed. Xia's secret technique, empty space. Chapter 1130. Xiajuyo looked up and slashed out with his blade. A pitch-black light swept through the void, slicing through it like a piece of paper as the blade flashed towards the tearful lady. The tearful lady gathered her star energy in front of her to block the three-blade intents while dodging. The first slash tore through the star energy and sliced the ocean in two. The second slash followed, its power doubled. The tearful lady's pupils shrank to the size of needles, and she charged at Xiajuyo with a resolute gaze. Xiajuyo's blade suddenly changed direction. The slash that should have hit the tearful lady deviated slightly and sliced the ocean in two again. The tearful lady suddenly stopped and stopped charging at Xiajuyo. Xiajuyo's three-blade intents had not been fully displayed, and the tearful lady's gaze gradually returned to normal. The atmosphere fell silent. At that moment, a figure appeared on the empty golden screen in the distance, and the two turned to look. It was Lu Yin. A mountain had split open, and the monkey had absorbed the progenitor's blood while Lu Yin climbed up the mountain and walked towards the golden screen. His appearance attracted everyone's attention. Chongqing was shocked. He had always been unperturbed no matter who he faced, but now Lu Yin had surprised him. The one who had appeared should have been the burial garden's heir. How could it be him? Even though he had hoped that Lu Yin could do it, he still found it hard to believe that Lu Yin had actually defeated the burial garden's heir. Qiushi watched Lu Yin climb up the golden screen and her gaze turned cold. She recalled what had happened in the Monolith realm, especially how Lu Yin had suddenly recovered from his injuries and could use secret techniques multiple times in a row. This person was very troublesome. Yuhua Mavis curiously sized up Lu Yin. Was this the classmate that Lulu had mentioned? He was in the same batch as Lulu, and it was quite miraculous that he could reach this step. Within the mountain and sea realm, Suhi watched Lu Yin climb up the golden screen. His expression seemed casual, but there was a deep fear hidden in the depths of his eyes. He was the third arbiter to be defeated by Lu Yin, and if not for those idiots in the home of the gods, he would have been in danger. If this person had truly become one of the 5 astral children, it would have been disadvantageous for him. Even his status as one of the 10 arbiters would not have been able to protect him. Tai Yuanjun looked at Lu Yin on the golden screen, and his eyes flashed with envy. This person who had once been like an ant had actually surpassed him in just a few short years, and he had even surpassed most of the 10 arbiters. Qing Long Long, Little Yi Wang, Xu Jing, Mu Xing, Hua Shao, Yao Ji, Taishan, Qing Guangshan, Ku Lei, Hui Santong, Sujiu Xia Zhou Xian, and the others were all looking at the people on the golden stage. These people were the supreme beings of the 5th mainland's younger generation. Lu Yin's appearance was surprising, but those who had fought him before were not surprised. This person had unparalleled potential, and it was no surprise that he could reach such heights. Atop the golden screen, Lu Yin walked forward step by step. From here he could clearly see the mountain and sea realm. His position was like a magnifying glass, allowing him to see every nook and cranny of the realm. He saw Mu Xing's trio, Taishan, Ku Lei and Ting He. He also saw Xia Jiuyo and Tearing Lady in a confrontation. As he watched the two of them face off in the distance, Lu Yin finally understood why Teardrop had left the stage. She had met her match. He had never seen this person before, but his appearance was very similar to Xia Luo's. He should be someone from the Xia family as well. The Xia family was the head of the 7 courts, and it had always been rumored that Xia Zhuyo was the weakest descendant of the Xia family. Now it seemed that not only was he not the weakest but he might even be the most powerful. Lu Yin understood Teardrop's strength, and from the looks of it she might be at a disadvantage against Xia Zhuyo. Xianxia and the others glanced at Lu Yin and then turned their attention back to the battle between Xia Zhuyo and Teardrop. The golden stage had 3 levels. The first level was at the peak of each mountain, while the second level expanded towards the center, covering a small portion of the mountain and sea realm. The third level was the highest point in the center of the mountain and sea realm. Only those who could stand there had the qualifications to be called the 5 astral children. There had been rumors that the 5 astral children could also be obtained by chance, but that was just the hope that the Hall of Honor had given to some people. Forget about chance, the 5 astral children had already been decided beforehand. Xianxia and the others did not move, and they all stood on the first level. Lu Yin did not move either, and they all watched the battle between Xia Zhuyo and Teardrop. That battle would determine who had the qualifications to climb up. Wait, where were Sansi and the others? Lu Yin suddenly thought of the other 10 arbiters. When Sansi, Lu Tianmu, Ling Gong, Drunkard, and Obscuring Light were nowhere to be seen. Were they all at the bottom of the sea? Or had they been killed? In the distance, Xia Zhuyo retracted his gaze from Lu Yin and looked at Teardrop. If I'm not wrong, you were planning on receiving the second blade intent and then using a punishment technique to transfer the damage to me. Teardrop's tone was indifferent. That's why you gave up on the third blade intent. There aren't many women like you. Aren't you afraid of dying? Xia Zhuyo was puzzled. Teardrop replied, I am, but you can't kill me. Xia Zhuyo laughed. Everyone who should fight has already fought and I don't want to waste any more time. It's time for the battle to end. His palm then glowed with a dark light as he leapt towards Teardrop and struck out. Ripples spread out from Teardrop's body. It was still her innate gift of hypnosis, but she did not succeed this time. Xia Zhuyo struck out at an empty space, hitting her right in the middle. Tearful Lady was hit by the palm, and her body was pushed back 100 meters. Xia Zhuyo didn't stop there and continued to attack. Just as he was about to hit Tearful Lady, he turned around and shifted his palm by half a body's length, hitting Tearful Lady again. Teardrop had already been hit by 4 Netherforge palms, and half of her body had been frozen. Her movements had slowed down, but she quickly understood that Xia Zhuyo had been able to find her because of the unique chill of the Netherforge palms. She had been hit twice before and she could not possibly dodge these 2 palms alone. Xia Zhuyo looked at her. It seems like you've thought it through. The moment you were hit by the first Netherforge palm, the battle ended. Teardrop's gaze was cold. Not necessarily. She then pointed at Xia Zhuyo. Secret technique. Punishment. Xia Zhuyo's back hurt as soon as she spoke. The chill froze him and a palm imprint appeared out of nowhere. Xia Zhuyo frowned, but he did not dodge. He could not avoid the Hall of Honor's punishment secret technique. The Hall of Honor's most disgusting secret technique was punishment. Injuries suffered by the user could be transferred to the attacker. It was unavoidable and could not be defended against. It had to be endured. This was the Hall of Honor's secret technique that shocked the Neoverse. Punishment. In the Neoverse, when the Hall of Honor was mentioned, the first thing that came to mind was the Glory Realm, followed by the Ruler, and finally punishment secret techniques. The Hall of Honor had more than one secret technique, but punishment secret techniques were the most terrifying and disgusting. No one wanted to take their own attacks, but punishment secret techniques had to be taken by the user. Many people did not dare to use too much strength in their attacks, afraid that the more they used, the more unlucky they would be. However, if they did not use their full strength, they would not be able to win the battle. Punishment secret techniques were the most disgusting secret techniques. No one knew who the progenitor who had developed this secret technique was, or they would be cursed for countless years. Xia Zhuyo was now suffering the consequences of the Netherforge palm. He had not used his second blade intent because he was worried about punishment secret techniques. Crying Lady continued to point at Xia Zhuyo. Secret technique. Punishment. Xia Zhuyo did not move. His shoulder was frozen by the Netherforge palm's power. The third Netherforge palm landed on his chest. Like Crying Lady, half of his body was frozen. Crying Lady panted heavily and looked at Xia Zhuyo unwillingly. A secret technique was not a battle technique and she could not use it whenever she wanted. She had already reached her limit. Xia Juyo's lips curled up. Are you done venting? You can admit defeat now. Crying Lady closed her eyes and stood quietly on the surface of the sea. I lost. The Netherforge palm was very damaging, but the most troublesome part was the cold air. It could freeze the opponent's movements and locate them. This was why Crying Lady's innate gift had failed. Crying Lady could return the damage caused by the Netherforge palm to Xia Juyo, but she could not use it to fight back. In Xia Juyo's eyes, Crying Lady was just venting. Crying Lady was defeated and Xia Juyo's body trembled. The ice shattered and he fell to the sea. The Netherforge palm was useless against him. Xia Juyo smiled at Crying Lady and then walked towards the mountain. He had replaced Crying Lady as one of the 5 people to step onto the golden stage. If nothing unexpected happened, he would become one of the 5 starry children. Outside the mountain and sea realm, the older generation experts were silent, especially Muin. To the outside world, the 5 starry children needed to be fought over, but to the Hall of Honor, it was just a formality. They had already decided on the 5 starry children: Shangqing, Crying Lady, Emergence Mavis, Autumn Sure and Quiet Weep. This was not only because the 5 starry children were unparalleled, but also because of the distribution of benefits. The Hall of Honor was in charge of the Hall of Honor. It was the dominating force of the entire human star sector. Although it was the strongest, it could not rule the human star sector by itself. They needed balance, just like how someone from the 7 courts had become one of the 5 children of the stars. This balance had not been broken for many years and it could not be broken. The competition for the Star Tower was the same. The Hall of Honor already knew how strong the heirs of the 7 courts were, and there were no experts who could threaten the 5 chosen. The other powers of the Neoverse, including the 10 arbiters of the Innerverse, had all been evaluated by the Hall of Honor. They had determined that they could not threaten the 5 chosen, which was why they had decided to compete for the Star Tower. However, no one had expected Xia Juyo to suddenly rise up and defeat Crying Lady with such shocking strength. Crying Lady's heartless sorrow of autumn was very difficult to defend against. She had 2 secret techniques, an innate gift and various battle techniques from the Hall of Honor. Her physical strength and spiritual force were perfect, but she had been completely countered by Xia Juyo's Netherforge palm and her innate gift. Although Xia Juyo had been injured, his injuries did not affect him at all. To the Hall of Honor, this was an accident that broke the balance. And this accident could even threaten the others. It wasn't just Xia Juyo. Lu Yin had also defeated Quiet Weep and replaced her as one of the 5 starry children. This was something that Mu En and the others had not expected. Chapter 1131. Quiet Weep was an enlighter from the burial garden, but she had actually been defeated. Muin couldn't help but look at Shangxing Shenwei. Shangxing Shenwei also looked at Muin. I think that this balance is fine. Muin shook his head. Look at Shangqing. We can't interfere anymore. Shangxing Shenwei looked at the screen. Good luck. Perhaps even most of the people in the Hall of Honor didn't know that the true power of the 3 suns' ancestral qi had never been revealed. Within the mountain and sea realm, 5 people appeared on the golden screen, their light enveloping the entire realm. Everyone else in the mountain and sea realm looked at the 5 of them. Were they the 5 starry suns? Shangxing Shenwei calmly glanced at the crowd before looking at the cracked eye in the mountain range. That was an inheritance, a comprehension, a power vessel, a natural treasure or an experience. The blood of a progenitor was a treasure, and every time there was a competition for the Star Tower, there would be a phenomenon that would affect the mountain and sea realm. That phenomenon was an inheritance, and whoever obtained that inheritance would become one of the 5 starry children. Shangxing Shenwei could accept the inheritance, but he didn't move. The other 4 didn't move either. Lu Yin didn't move either, as the progenitor blood that had appeared in his mountain range had been absorbed by the monkey. Lu Yin's eyes were fixed on the mountain range where the root had appeared. Why did it look so familiar? Could it be the root of wisdom? If it was the root of wisdom, Lu Yin would definitely find a way to obtain it. The mountain range where the root had appeared had originally belonged to the Crying Lady, but it had now been replaced by Xia Juyo. When Xia Juyo saw Lu Yin staring at him, he thought that Lu Yin was looking at him and smiled. Brother Lu, I've heard a lot about you. Lu Yin didn't even look at Xia Juyo. When he heard Xia Juyo speak to him, he looked at him. You're a descendant of the Xia family? You look a lot like Xia Luo. Xia Juyo's lips curled up. There were some things that didn't need to be hidden. After reaching his current position, he needed the support of the entire human domain, not just the Xia family. Xia Luo said that he would wait for you here. His words are mine. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed as he stared at Xia Juyo. The shock in his eyes could not be concealed, and it felt like a storm was brewing in his mind. Xia Juyo smiled. His smile was very happy and unfathomable. It was a smile that made people shudder. Lu Yin stared at Xia Juyo in disbelief. You and Xia Luo? Xia Juyo laughed. Xianxia, Ascension Mavis, and Qiushi all looked at him in confusion. In Lu Yin's mind, the monkey was horrified. He and Xia Luo? They look alike, but they are definitely not the same person. Seventh brother, what's going on? What do you mean by what Xia Luo said is what he said? Lu Yin's fingers trembled, and he suddenly recalled what Xiaoqing had said to him back in the Daoist sect's ruins. There were people on the fifth mainland who shared the same aura. Perhaps they were the same person, or perhaps they had cultivated the 9 clones technique. If it wasn't for Xiaoqing's words, if he didn't know about the 9 clones technique, and if it wasn't for Xia Juyo's words, he wouldn't have guessed it at all. This was too strange. Is there really a 9 clones technique in this world? You've cultivated the legendary 9 clones technique? Xia Luo is one of your clones? Lu Yin asked in shock. With a single sentence, the expressions of the three of them changed as they stared at Xia Juyo. Xia Juyo's lips curled up, and he glanced at Xianxia, Ascension Mavis, and Qiushi. Isn't the 9 clones technique very mysterious? Lu Yin took a deep breath. He had admitted that Xia Luo was one of his clones. Wait, then Xia Tian should be one as well. Perhaps there was another descendant of the Xia family, Xia Kong, and so on. One person could split into 9, so that was the 9 clones technique. Xianxia stared at Xia Juyo in shock. 9 clones technique? The legendary invincible technique. According to ancient legends, progenitor Qin had used this technique to fight against 9 people at once. Although he was only one ancestor, he was still equivalent to 9 ancestors. The 3 Yang ancestral qi was indeed an invincible technique, but if one really had to compare it with the 9 clones technique, it was hard to say which one was stronger, as they had never been compared in the same era. Ascension Mavis stared at Xia Juyo in shock. 9 clones technique? Her family had indeed recorded this technique, but she had thought that it was just a rumor. How had someone managed to cultivate it? Did the Xia family have an inheritance of the 9 clones technique? The family had indeed recorded that progenitor Chen's surname was Xia. Could he really be an ancestor of the Xia family? Qiushi frowned and stared at Xia Juyo. The 9 clones technique was progenitor Chen's invincible technique. To others it was a shocking technique, but to the Sirius sect it was different. This was because the Sirius technique also came from progenitor Chen, and they were of the same lineage. The Sirius sect's desire for the 9 clones technique was unimaginable. The Sirius sect had long since ascertained that the Xia family's ancestor was progenitor Chen, which was why they had been able to obtain his inheritance. However, they had never expected that even the 9 clones technique would be passed down. Outside the mountain and sea realm, Mu En and the others were stunned. The 9 clones technique actually existed, and someone had even managed to cultivate it. Many people looked at Xia Meng, assuming that Xia Juyo's technique had come from the Xia family. However, Xia Meng's expression was calm as she looked at the screen. Everyone assumed that she was looking at Xia Juyo, but she was actually looking at a woman who was slowly climbing the mountain. Xia Juyo looked around. Is the 9 clones technique surprising? I'm not the only one who's managed to cultivate it. Lu Yin was shocked, and he suddenly looked in Qiushi's direction. Xianxia and the others also looked in her direction. Behind her, a woman had appeared. It was Starsabil. Qiushi slowly turned around and looked at Starsabil. Xia Juyo also looked at Starsabil. You can't hold it in anymore? You finally jumped out. Starsabil looked at Xia Juyo. It doesn't matter. Qiushi stared at Starsabil. The other person he's talking about who's managed to cultivate the 9 clones technique is you? Starsabil did not deny it, and she met Qiushi's gaze. My Immerse must obtain one of the 5 astral children. Qiushi was puzzled. Why? Others might not know, but you should know that the 5 astral children aren't that valuable. Why would the Starsabil sect pay such a high price to obtain them? If not for your Starsabil sect's intervention and using divination as a condition for the Immerse to participate in the contest for the Star Tower, the 10 arbiters would not have appeared here, and neither would you. What do you want? Just the title of the 5 astral children? Star Sibyl indifferently replied, we'll talk about it after we obtain it. Otherwise, everything will be meaningless. Zhou Xian indifferently replied, you can't have it. You can't have it. Star Sibyl looked at Lu Yin. Think of a way to become one of the 5 astral children. If you succeed, the Star Sibyl sect will follow your lead and serve you for 10,000 years. Lu Yin had been shocked enough today, so he was not surprised by anything that Star Sibyl said. Serve him for 10,000 years? He did not believe that. Who knew what this woman was thinking? This woman had cultivated the 9 clones technique, but she had still been hiding behind the scenes. She had wanted to borrow Night King Zhenwu's hand to become one of the 5 astral children. After Night King Zhenwu had been defeated, she had tried to bewitch Lu Yin. Now she had stepped forward to compete for it. The title of the 5 astral children might be very important to the Star Sibyl sect, and it would not be surprising for this woman to do anything for the sake of this reputation. Outside the mountain and sea realm, a group of older powerhouses found this strange. They were not the only ones who could see the screen, as it had also spread to the Hall of Honor, the Sirius sect, the 7 courts and various other great powers. Even the older powerhouses of these powers did not understand what the Star Sibyl sect was thinking. The 5 astral children was just a title for the younger generation, and it could even influence an entire generation. However, the older powerhouses were still alive, and some of them had even sealed themselves in ice to become the foundation of their clan. One generation or even several generations would not have much of an impact, so why did the Star Sibyl sect care so much about this title? They cared a little too much about it. No one could understand. In a strange place in the glory realm, old Zen opened his eyes, and his gaze pierced through the void to see the screen and Star Sibyl. I also hope that the Innerverse can break the Neoverse monopoly over the 5 astral children. Unfortunately, this generation is not enough. The appearance of the 3 young ancestral qi means that there will be another generation to serve as a foil. The 9 clones technique will only succeed in the future, not now. The current era is called the 3 young ancestral qi. In the mountain and sea realm on the golden screen, Star Sibyl's appearance caused the atmosphere to freeze. Everyone in the mountain and sea realm was watching. The little stutter looked at Lu Yin with a longing expression. Meat, it's meat. Follow the meat. Ku Lei stared at the golden screen. He really wanted to step onto that stage, but he was still too far away. The timing was not right. If Progenitor Chen's tomb had opened earlier, then he would have definitely obtained an even more powerful inheritance and become an enlighter. The Xiaoya king looked up at the sky as the golden light illuminated the entire mountain and sea realm. He had been sealed in ice for many years, and at the moment he had been sealed he had already reached the peak of his generation. He had thought that he would be invincible after coming out, but when he saw the 10 arbiters he knew that it was impossible. Those 10 were too powerful, and now that he had come to the Neoverse, there were even more powerhouses. He did not understand what was wrong with this era. Did formcast models make these people so ridiculously powerful? Mingyu looked up at the sky. There were 6 people, 3 men, and she would be married to one of the 3. This was her destiny. Even if she had to become a slave, she would still have to marry one of the 5 astral children. Of course, she also hoped that this would allow her to escape from that person. He wondered who she could marry. Mingyu looked at Shangqing, then at Xiajuyo, and then at Lu Yin. This person would be very difficult. The others were clearly stronger than him, so it would be Shangqing and Xiajuyo. Lu Yin, do your best. Kill them all. Little Black and Little White shouted excitedly. Lan Si exhaled and looked up at the golden screen in the sky. The 5 astral children were not necessarily the strongest. After this he would return to the Greyweed continent. There he would learn the rest of the emptiness palm. Brother Lu, we can spar again at that time. It was as if everyone on the golden screen had reached an agreement. Aside from the progenitor blood that had been secretly absorbed by the ghost monkey, no one touched the other inheritances. Everyone was confident that they could accept the inheritances and defeat the others. Zhou Xian attacked Star Sibyl. The 9 clones technique was a technique that the Sirius sect desired, and Xiajuyo could learn it. He was Progenitor Chen's successor, so why should Star Sibyl? Star Sibyl stepped onto the golden screen, already prepared to fight Zhou Xian. Shangqing stepped onto the highest golden screen and walked towards Xiajuyo. I want to experience the 9 clones technique. Xiajuyo's relaxed expression vanished, and he solemnly looked at the approaching Shangqing. I also want to experience the ancestral qi of the three sons. The four of them began to fight, and the final ones left were naturally Lu Yin and levitating Mavis. Chapter 1132. Lu Yin looked at Yuhua Mavis. Yuhua Mavis also looked at Lu Yin. Within the mountain and sea realm, many people looked at them at the same time. They were the only ones left. Outside the mountain and sea realm, Haizid Shenwei sighed. It was over. This kid had been able to defeat Hidden Weep with the Beast Tamer Union because he had found her weakness. But as for the Mavis family, even after so many years, Haizid Shenwei still hadn't been able to find a weakness. Mu En only glanced at Lu Yin before turning his attention back to Shangqing and Xiajiuyo. 3 young ancestral qi and 9 clones were competing. These two battle techniques that didn't belong to the same era were finally clashing. Within the mountain and sea realm, atop a golden screen, Lu Yin pursed his lips. Actually, 5 people should be enough once they're done. We might even be missing one, so we don't need to fight. He really didn't want to fight as he wasn't confident. The Mavis family's Treeheart's successor sounded powerful. Back when he had used the serious art to spy on the Day-Night clan's inheritance stone and enter the inheritance corridor, Lulu had been able to do the same. Furthermore, she had been a melder and had controlled an explorer sea turtle. He would never forget that scene for the rest of his life. Even though Lulu's performance hadn't been too outrageous, Lu Yin was still wary of the Mavis family. Furthermore, he needed money to cultivate, so he subconsciously believed that whoever was rich would be powerful. The Mavis family was the wealthiest, so there was no doubt that he was a little flustered. Across from him, Yuhua Mavis smiled. Let's exchange some pointers. I'm curious about Lulu's classmates. You were able to defeat Hidden Weep, so you're on the same level as us. Lu Yin was speechless. I'm almost there. Maybe next time. At least wait until I break through to the Hunter realm. Yuhua Mavis chuckled. No need, this is a rare opportunity. I heard that you're very strong. Lu Yin was speechless. I'm classmates with Lulu and we're very close. Yuhua Mavis blinked. I'm also very close to Lulu. Many people were speechless and felt embarrassed. Lu Yin was too cowardly. Little Black and Xiao Bai covered their faces. Lan Si coughed. They couldn't blame Lu Yin, he was just a cruiser. Haizid Shenwei felt awkward. Brat, even if you can't win, you shouldn't be a coward. Xia Meng looked at him in surprise. You know when to yield and when not to. Not bad, kid. Shangxing Shenwei's eyes lit up. That's right. Being flexible is a tradition of Everlasting Island. Little Dream, do you like it? Not far away, an old man sneered. If the sage Heavenly Master finds out that you said that, he'll beat you to death. High Sage Shenwei curled his lips. Within the mountain and sea realm, no matter what Lu Yin said, Yuanhua Mavis still stepped across the golden screen and attacked him. Lu Yin did not want to fight, but even if his opponent came knocking on his door, he would not admit defeat. Even if he was rather apprehensive of Ascension Mavis, he would not be careless when it came to taking action. The appearance of a Yu Mavis was very intimidating. It was barefoot and flowers bloomed wherever it went. It had to be said that it had frightened quite a few people. However, Lu Yin's ruthlessness was not weak either, as he had been able to kill Enlighters while still a Limiter. Once he started fighting, he could disregard many things. Bunga loud explosion startled quite a few people as Yuhua Mavis jumped down from the highest golden platform and punched at Lu Yin. Just as she had said, she wanted to test Lu Yin's strength. Lu Yin countered with pure strength as well. The two fists collided and pure strength tore through the void, causing cracks to spread out. In an instant, even Qiu Shi, Starsabil, Shangqing and Xiajiuyo were attracted to this scene. His strength was ridiculous, and the Mavis family was known throughout the universe for their strength. However, not many people in the Neoverse knew about Lu Yin's strength. Lu Yin and Yuhua Mavis' fists collided and both parties were pushed back. This scene stunned many. Lu Yin had actually withstood Yuhua Mavis' strength? Lu Yin steadied himself and looked up at Yuhua Mavis. He clenched his right fist so tightly that it turned red. This woman was actually so strong. On the other side, Yuhua Mavis also looked at Lu Yin in astonishment. Finally, she smiled and said, "No wonder Lulu said that you're strong." She then charged at Lu Yin and punched out. For a woman to use her fists as a weapon, it did not seem out of place. This was the Mavis family. For a long time, Yuhua Mavis had fought with others by controlling grass to transform into fists. However, her battle with Lu Yin was different because Lu Yin's strength had truly piqued her interest. How could someone from the Outerverse possess such strength? Lu Yin shifted a grain of fates and then punched out. Bang! The air trembled and visible ripples spread outwards. Yuhua Mavis' eyes lit up. Again. Lu Yin shifted a second grain of fates and then punched out. Bang! The shock waves from the collision of strength spread outwards, affecting Qiu Shi and Starsabil. The two Enlighters had used star energy to attack each other, and their star energy was shaken to the point of instability. Yuhua punched out a third time. Lu Yin's eyes went wide and he shifted a third grain of fates and to his full strength, punching out. Bang! Another loud explosion attracted the attention of the Xianxia and Xiajiuyo. Although the other battles were also very exciting, with the three Yang's ancestral Qi and 9 clones being the focus of attention, the battle between Lu Yin and Yuhua Mavis was just too intense. Physical combat was the most intense form of battle, and it had been many years since anyone had challenged the Mavis family's strength. Lu Yin was the first in many years, and he had even challenged the Tree Heart's descendant. Even Haizid Shenwei and the others were curious to see how far Lu Yin could go against Yuhua Mavis. Yuhua Mavis had not expected Lu Yin to withstand 4 of her punches. Again. Lu Yin gritted his teeth. He had already used all of his strength, but when he saw Yuhua Mavis' fist pressing down on him, he realized that there was no way to counter her pure strength. Lu Yin's 9-lined battle force soared into the sky and he punched out. There was a loud bang and the two were pushed back once more. Yuhua Mavis' eyes flashed. Did he run out of strength? Lu Yin thought to himself as he activated his 9-lined battle force and charged forward once more. It was a very simple punch, but it was this kind of suppression that caused the void to stabilize, making it difficult for Lu Yin to dodge. He did not want to dodge either, as he had never lost to anyone in terms of strength. Today he did not want to be suppressed by Yuhua Mavis. Of course he had already lost in terms of pure strength, but he still had his battle force, overlaying stacks, and the Aeon evolution scripture. He did not believe that Yuhua Mavis could defeat him with just one punch. Yuhua Mavis' control over her strength had reached the pinnacle, and Lu Yin's entire body's strength was boosted by his 9-lined battle force. Her punches were just slightly stronger than his own, and Lu Yin had to use even more strength to defend himself. Otherwise he would be defeated. This kind of pressure made it impossible for him to be distracted, and his nerves were stretched taut. Faced with this punch, Lu Yin's arm erupted with overlaying stacks, and he immediately unleashed 170 stacks along with his 9-lined battle force. Yuhua Mavis punched out and there was a loud bang as the overlaying stacks continued without end. Yuhua Mavis was astonished and there was a rare look of excitement in her eyes. There was even a hint of battle intent in her eyes as she blocked the attack with both fists. She locked eyes with Lu Yin and said, "Again." With that, she suddenly increased her strength and actually managed to withstand 170 stacks and force Lu Yin back. Lu Yin retreated 10 steps and stared at her in disbelief. This woman was a monster. 7th bro, this woman is too abnormal. The monkey was horrified. Across from him, Yuhua Mavis charged forward once more. You took 6 of my punches head-on. No one in the same generation has ever done that. Buin, I admire you. Although she said that she admired him, her actions were very honest. She threw a punch at Lu Yin and the void was unable to withstand the force of this punch. It attracted the wary gazes of the Xianxia and the rest. Lu Yin gritted his teeth and his eyes turned into runes as he activated the Aeon Evolution True Scripture to weaken the rune lines. Yuhua Mavis' punch definitely had a power level of over 300,000, but after being weakened by Lu Yin's Aeon Evolution True Scripture, it was reduced to just over 200,000. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lu Yin raised his fist and punched out with his 9-lined battle force and overlaying stacks. Yuhua Mavis sensed that her strength had been weakened, and she smiled as her fist continued forward. Boom! A shockwave tore through space and the void exploded with a thunderous sound that spread out in all directions. It was clearly a simple exchange of fists, but the strength that the two had displayed had stunned countless people. Just as Yuhua Mavis had said, there was no one in her generation who could match her fists. Lu Yin was the first to do so. 7 punches, a total of 7 punches. Lu Yin retreated once more and the bones in his right fist had cracked. Fresh blood dripped down his skin and onto the golden stage. He stared at Yuhua Mavis. This woman was truly a monster. Yuhua Mavis looked at Lu Yin in admiration. You've reached your limit. 7 punches, that's your limit. Lu was right, you're very strong. Lu Yin shook his head and smiled bitterly. If we were to compete in strength, I could only take 4 of your punches. The last 3 were cheating. Yuhua Mavis smiled. Competing in strength with my Mavis family is just asking for trouble. Strength can be seen as our innate gift, and I'm using my strength to attack your weakness. You're not cheating. Her words sounded strange. Ever since he had become a melder, strength had always been Lu Yin's pride. Today he had been told that he was weak. It was laughable, but it was the truth. As expected of the Mavis family. 7th bro, don't waste your strength, the monkey said. Lu Yin thought so as well. Competing in strength with this woman was just asking for trouble. Let's run, the monkey said. Lu Yin frowned. What do you know? The monkey helplessly replied, how should I put it? Although I've lost a lot of my memories, I still have some understanding of the Mavis family through the letters of various powerhouses. This family's true innate gifts are rather unfathomable, and the descendants of the tree heart have never suffered any defeats. If you want to beat her, you'll need to at least become a hunter or even an enlighter. How could it be possible for a powerhouse who was unrivaled in her generation to challenge someone who was a realm breaker and win? When he saw how relaxed Yuhua Mavis was, Lu Yin knew that it was unlikely for him to win. However, he had already come this far and he was unwilling to back down. Although you have a good relationship with Lulu, you are not fated to participate in this battle for the Star Tower. It's fated, so back down, Yuhua Mavis said sincerely. Through Lulu and Grandini's descriptions, she knew that although Lu Yin had a great desire for power and could even unify the Outerverse, he was not a heartless person. She admired such a person and did not want to be too harsh on him. Chapter 1133. Lu Yin could tell that Yuanhua Mavis was sincerely advising him, but he did not want to retreat just like that. Seeing that Lu Yin was unwilling to give up, Yuanhua Mavis stood there with her hands clasped behind her back. Grass spread out beneath her feet and covered the entire golden platform. Then the grass grew wildly and twisted together to form a giant green fist. Even if you can't become one of the 5 children of the stars, fighting with us is still a valuable experience. Try this. The green fist smashed towards Lu Yin. Lu Yin's expression changed as he could tell from the rune lines that this fist's power was comparable to Yuanhua Mavis' 7th punch, and it had a much wider range. He waved his hand and activated the secret art, forcefully changing the direction of the fist's attack. Many were shocked. Outside the Mountain Sea realm, Xiameng frowned. Secret art. Mu En and the rest recognized that this was the 7 Quartz family's secret art, Void Transformation. The secret art, Void Transformation, and the Xia secret art, Void Transformation. Although they were only 1 word apart, the effects were completely different. The Yu family has come to the Outerverse, so it seems like they have some connection with this child, Elder Yuanka said. Haizid Shenwei moved closer to Xiameng. Little Meng, since this kid inherited the Yu secret art, can he be considered a member of the Yu family? Then he should be qualified to participate in the 7 Quartz exploration of the tomb. Many people looked at Xiameng when they heard this. Muan looked over as well. The 7 Quartz had joined forces to guard progenitor Chen's tomb, and every time the tomb opened, only the direct descendants of the 7 Quartz could enter. Even the Hall of Honor could not interfere. Xiameng replied, the Yu family's descendants will have proof, not just the Yu secret art. Perhaps the Yu family was harmed by him. That's not wrong. This kid has unified the Outerverse, an elder said. Haizid Shenwei rolled his eyes. Even if the Yu family has declined, it's still not something a kid can deal with. This kid cultivated step by step from the Outerverse to the stage of the 5 astral children, and it only took him a total of 12 years. Even the Hall of Honor's #1 disciple, Shangqing Fatsi, wouldn't be able to achieve such a feat. His background isn't that simple. Besides your everlasting Sky Island, there might be others, another elder said. He then laughed strangely as if he was taking pleasure in Lu Yin's misfortune. High Sage Shenwei wanted to retort, but after thinking about it he felt that it made sense. Even if Everlasting Sky Island used all of its resources to nurture an absolute genius, they would only be able to reach this level at most. They might not even be able to surpass Lu Yin, which was strange. Considering everything that Lu Yin had experienced since he started cultivating, he had survived many calamities that should have been fatal. It was impossible for there to be no one behind him. Many of the older powerhouses looked at the screen and then at Lu Yin, each with their own thoughts. Within the mountain and sea realm, Yuhua Mavis was shocked when Lu Yin used the Yu secret art to change the direction of the fist's attack. The Yu secret art? Lu Yin charged towards Yuhua, raising a hand and pointing a finger. Seventh brother pointed a finger. 9-lined battle force enveloped Lu Yin's body as his domain compressed his spiritual force onto his finger. His fingertip contained overlaying stacks, and the true scripture of Ian evolution weakened the rune lines on the surface of Levitation Mavis' body. This was the strongest attack that Lu Yin could currently unleash. Seventh brother's finger shocked many. 9-lined battle force aside, not just anyone could compress spiritual force with a domain. Furthermore, Lu Yin's fingertip contained overlaying stacks. Combined with the true scripture of Ian evolution, a single finger was enough to instantly kill an absolute expert of the same generation. Even Levitation Mavis was shocked at this moment. She did not move as she watched the finger descend, and the shock in her eyes suddenly disappeared. Lu Yin's heart sank as he had a bad premonition. At some point in time his legs had been entangled by the grass. His finger was still half a meter away from Levitation Mavis, but he could no longer attack. The grass tenacity exceeded his expectations and Lu Yin was flung away. At the same time the grass grew wildly and twisted together to form a giant green fist that covered the sky and punched towards Lu Yin's head. Lu Yin's feet were still entangled by the grass and even with his strength he could not break free. Facing the fist that covered the sky, a star-scattered chessboard appeared beneath his feet. He activated the secret plan star-scattered chessboard and in the next moment his body turned into a chess piece as he moved. Boom! There was a loud sound as the green fist smashed into the golden screen. However, many people no longer cared about Levitation Mavis' attack as they were shocked by Lu Yin's plan secret art. Although many of them had seen Lu Yin use the plan secret art before and were shocked by it, they were still shocked when they saw it again. No one had ever grasped two secret techniques of the 7 courts at the same time. Lu Yin was the first. Within the mountain and sea realm, Sujiu stared blankly at the sky. How was this possible? Wasn't that a secret technique of the Su family? How did this person know it? It was extremely difficult for even the family's disciples to learn the Su family's secret techniques. Since ancient times, not every descendant of the family had been able to learn them. But now an outsider had managed to do so. How had he done it? Lu Yin was not worried that the planned secret art would be exposed. He now had the backing of Everlasting Island and had unified the Outerverse, so there was no need for him to fear the Su family. Although the Su family would definitely cause trouble for him, that was a matter for the future. He could not afford to not use the secret technique just because he was worried about future troubles. On the golden screen, Levitation Mavis looked at Lu Yin in admiration. The Yu secret art and the planned secret art. Lu Yin, I'm curious about you. What other abilities do you have? Use them all at once. As she spoke, the grass grew wildly as green fists appeared one after another and fiercely bombarded Lu Yin. Lu Yin could dodge 1 or 2 fists, but he could not dodge all of them. This was what Levitation Mavis thought. However, as Lu Yin circulated the art of Sirius, all of the green fists were evaded. Speed was meaningless in the face of the art of Sirius. Not only did Lu Yin avoid the green fists, but he also managed to find time to strike out with his hollow palm. The hollow palm was so fast that even Hidden Weep and the Tearful Girl could not react in time. One was transparent while the other was forcefully enduring the attack. Levitation Mavis was the same as the Tearful Girl. She could only forcefully endure the attack. However, she was stronger than the Tearful Girl in that she could endure the hollow palm because of the green grass in front of her. The hollow palm attack could at most scatter the grass, but it would not be able to harm Levitation Mavis. If Lu Yin wanted to hurt her, he would have to get close to her. The art of Sirius and more than 500 stars at that. You really surprise me, Lu Yin, Levitation Mavis praised. Dozens more green fists appeared as she spoke, covering the entire sky in an attempt to attack Lu Yin in an area of effect. However, Lu Yin's speed was not slow either. With the combination of the art of Sirius and the true scripture of Ian evolution, he was able to avoid being hit. Before Levitation Mavis could even be surprised, the star chessboard appeared beneath Lu Yin's feet once more. He immediately appeared in front of Levitation Mavis and used Seventh Brother's finger once more. He did not believe that he could not hit this woman. Levitation Mavis was wearing a green dress that was made of green leaves. Lu Yin pointed a finger at her heart, and the green leaf around her heart suddenly enlarged before transforming into a fist the size of a baby and colliding with seventh brother's finger. Lu Yin's overlaying stacks was immediately repelled by a huge force, and his 9-line battle force was instantly disintegrated. As for the spiritual force that was compressed by his domain, it was completely ineffective against Levitation Mavis. Lu Yin's seventh brother's finger was forced back by the green fist, and his fingertips even cracked. Lu Yin was aghast and in disbelief. His attack was actually useless against her. Just how strong was this woman? Levitation Mavis opened her hand and clenched it. Beneath Lu Yin's feet, the green grass covered him and coiled around him. The enormous strength caused him to feel as if he was being coiled around by a python, causing him to suffocate. You've worked hard in this battle for the Star Tower. You may leave now. With that, Levitation Mavis waved her hand and tossed Lu Yin off the golden stage and into the sea. Was Lu Yin weak? He was definitely not weak. He had been able to defeat Hidden Cry with the help of Ghost Monkey. Even though he had broken through Hidden Cry's battle technique and found her weakness, it still proved that he was on the same level as Hidden Cry and the others. Otherwise, he would not have been able to defeat her. However, Levitation Mavis was terrifyingly strong. Her strength seemed to be limitless, and there were no blind spots around her. Unless Lu Yin used an absolute attack to break through her defenses, he would not be able to win. And this was under the premise that she did not use any of her battle techniques or innate gifts. Lu Yin's current strength was not enough to break through Levitation Mavis' defenses. Levitation Mavis did not attack Lu Yin too heavily and merely tossed him into the sea. While victory and defeat had been decided, on the other side the battle between Xianxia and Xiajuyo was not as intense, but it was still just as thrilling. In fact, it was even more dangerous. Xiajuyo used the nether refining palm and his innate gift to attack Xianxia again and again. However, Xianxia's 3 ancestral qis were truly difficult to deal with. One strand of ancestral qi chased after Xiajuyo, while the other 2 strands of ancestral qi seemed to have no blind spots. No matter how Xiajuyo attacked, his attacks did not affect Xianxia at all. With no other choice, Xiajuyo could only use his 3-blade intense. The first slash tore through one strand of ancestral qi and descended in front of Xianxia, but it was shattered by the second strand. The second slash descended, but before it could reach Xianxia, Xiajuyo retreated. The ancestral qi that he had scattered earlier had gathered back together, giving him an intense sense of danger. Xiajuyo's third slash was still unable to land. It was the same for his battle with Lei LV. Xianxia's gaze was piercingly cold as he used just one strand of ancestral qi to suppress Xiajuyo. This strand of ancestral qi forced Xiajuyo to continuously dodge, not daring to face it head-on. This was the strength of the Hall of Honor's #1 disciple, and this was the power of the 3 ancestral qis. On the other side, the battle between Qiushi and Starsabil was incomprehensible. Starsabil was most adept at divining attacks and could avoid damage in advance, while Qiushi used serious speed was meaningless in front of her, and the 2 girls fought for a long time without even touching each other. Levitation Mavis watched the 2 battles and her fingers gradually bent. He was about to attack. Above the sea, Lu Yin crashed into it with a thump, causing a huge splash. The grass scattered the moment he hit the bottom of the sea, and Lu Yin struggled out while panting heavily. In the distance, Blackie, Xiaobai and Lan Si quickly rushed over. You lost, Lu Yin. You're useless. Xiaobai was unhappy. Blackie also glared at Lu Yin. You're a disgrace to everlasting Sky Island. Lu Yin smiled bitterly. Lan Si said, I've heard that the human domain's true elites are concentrated in the Neoverse. Now that I've seen it for myself, it seems that the rumors are true. Even Brother Lu was completely suppressed. This is something I never expected. Lu Yin was helpless. It was the same when I faced Nethercry. If my tamed beast hadn't broken through to the Hunter realm and restrained Nethercry's battle techniques, I wouldn't have been able to replace him. Chapter 1134. Forget it. We'll talk about it later. You've only cultivated for 12 years. With your talent, it's not impossible for you to catch up, Lan Si said. Lu Yin smiled wryly and looked up at the golden screen. It had not been easy for him to reach this step. He had even fought with the most powerful people in the Neoverse, but there was still a gap between them. Seventh bro, don't be discouraged. You still have a long way to go and you're still younger than them, the monkey advised. Lu Yin pursed his lips. Why didn't you help earlier? The monkey felt helpless. Everyone saw us fight with Yochi, so how could that woman not be on guard against me? With your strength, you'll be able to pose a threat to the 10 arbiters once you break through to the hunter realm. If you cooperate with me, you won't end up in such a miserable state, Lu Yin said unhappily. The monkey bitterly replied, you think too highly of me. All I can do is rely on illusions to influence the enemy. Why don't you take a look at who our opponent is? That's Mavis, the ancestor of manipulating people. Not only is my attack useless against her, but she might even use her innate gift to deal with you instead. His opponent was the Mavis, a freakish race. During the invasion of the Sixth Mainland, the higher-ups of the Sixth Mainland had issued orders to capture the Mavis family, but none of them had succeeded. This was the strength of the Mavis family, which had too many secrets. Currently there were 5 people on the golden screen and 2 of them were fighting. Many people originally thought that Ascension Mavis would take action, but no one expected that someone else would join the battle. Ascension Mavis slowly turned around and looked at the man who had just stepped onto the golden screen. He was shocked. 10 arbiters, no light. The one who had appeared on the golden stage was none other than 10 absolutes. A person who should have been defeated by the Prime Clear group and had no chance of becoming one of the 5 children of the stars. However, at this moment he had appeared on the golden stage where Ascension Mavis was. His eyes were already open as he looked at Ascension Mavis with bright eyes. Quite a few people from the mountain and sea realm were shocked, as someone from the Innerverse 10 arbiters had actually made a move. Starsabil, who was currently battling with Zhou Xian, had a look of joy in her eyes. The 10 arbiters had not disappointed her. The Starsabil sect had planned for countless years just for this day. The 10 arbiters were not as simple as they seemed. Although not all of them were extremely strong, there were still a few who could compete with the Neoverse top powerhouses, especially after they had broken through to the Enlighter realm. Beneath the golden screen, Lu Yin wasn't surprised. Ever since he had entered the mountain and sea realm, all he had heard was that the 10 arbiters had been defeated and kicked out of the mountain and sea realm. This was completely different from the 10 arbiters that he knew. Indeed, the Neoverse geniuses who had the qualifications to become the 5 astral children were all extremely powerful, and they were unfathomably powerful. However, the 10 arbiters should not have been completely annihilated, and Lan Si was not completely powerless against Hidden Tears. Lu Yin believed that if Lan Si fought against Hidden Tears again, even if he could not win, he would not lose so easily. Since Lan Si had reached such a level, then the other 10 arbiters would not be any worse off. If all of them could break through to the Enlighter realm, then things would be different. 10 never see the light, known as the bright dew. When the eyes open, the sun and the moon lose their light. This was not an exaggeration. Back when he had been suppressed by a progenitor's power, he had been able to fight against Zi. Now he had exposed his strength as an Enlighter and was standing in front of levitating Mavis. Shangqing, who was fighting with Xia Jiuyo, frowned when he saw Shan Guang. This person should have been defeated by him. Yuhua Mavis looked at Dimming Light curiously. Why did you hide your strength as an Enlighter and lose on purpose? Why do you want to become one of the 5 astral children so badly? Dimming Light calmly looked at Yuhua Mavis. Someone once said that they wanted us to lose once. Only by losing would we be able to see the mountain and sea realm clearly. So we lost. You guys. Yuhua Mavis was curious. Dimming Light looked in Shangqing's direction and saw Lu Tianmu slowly ascend the golden screen. He seemed to be in a very sorry state, which was the result of his battle with Hidden Weep. However, that battle had been a sham, as they had promised Starsabil. Now it was time for them to reveal their true strength. Another person walked out from the golden screen where Zhou Xian and Starsabil were standing. It was Wen Sansi. 3 10 arbiters walked out from 3 different directions, which was something that no one had expected. Even though Lu Yin had confidence in the 10 arbiters and did not think that they would lose so easily, he had not expected them to be so powerful as to intentionally lose. What exactly was the Starsabil sect planning? Starsabil told you guys to lose on purpose? Lu Yin asked Lan Si. Lan Si nodded and then smiled bitterly. I really lost. I couldn't beat Hidden Weep, but they must have done it on purpose. All 3 of them are Enlighters. Lu Yin was shocked, as 8 Enlighters had suddenly gathered here. When the 6th mainland had invaded, only the Dao Source 3 skies had been Enlighters. However, when he thought about it, it was not that surprising. The 10 arbiters, including the heir of the 7 courts, could all break through to the Enlighter realm, but they had not accumulated enough foundation. The 6th mainland's Realmlings could also break through, but they had not done so yet. Lu Yin believed that the 6th mainland definitely had more than 3 Enlighters from the Daoist 3 skies. After all, some time had passed since the invasion. Xia Juyo pulled away from Shangqing and looked at the distant Lu Tianmu with astonishment. He had not expected one of the 10 arbiters to appear. Xia Juyo's 9 clones technique allowed him to split into 9 clones, and aside from Xia Juyo himself, the one with the highest cultivation was Xia Tian. Xia Tian had continuously challenged the 10 arbiters because he wanted to test their limits. He had thought that he had done so, but he had not expected that he had still underestimated the 10 arbiters. At the very least, Xia Tian did not have any information about the 10 arbiters breaking through to the Enlighter realm. Lu Tianmu had inherited the sword sect's 13 swords, and his power was unparalleled. Now that he had revealed his Enlighter realm's strength, his sword qi distorted the void, and even Shangqing was shocked. In the entire Neoverse, there was not a single sect or family that could surpass the sword sect in terms of sword techniques. If not for the fact that the sword sect did not have any true powerhouses, they would have long since entered the Neoverse. However, the lack of true powerhouses did not mean that the younger generation lacked experts as well. Lu Tianmu's appearance proved that the sword sect had the qualifications to compete with the heirs of the various great powers in the Neoverse, even if they were up against the Hall of Honor's #1 disciple. Qiu Shi and Starsabil stopped fighting and calmly looked at Wen Sansi. You were actually hiding your Enlighter realm's strength. Wen Sansi smiled. I had no choice. I promised someone that I would be defeated once, so I had no choice. Qiu Shi looked at Starsabil. What is your Starsabil sect trying to do? Is it worth it to become one of the 5 astral children? You should know that it's just a title. Starsabil's expression turned solemn. We'll talk about it when the results are out. You'll know. Qiu Shi frowned and looked at Wen Sansi before looking at Starsabil. Both of you should attack together. Starsabil's eyes flickered and she seemed to be divining something. Qiu Shi was known as one of the 4 ultimate beauties. Her cultivation as an Enlighter, her secret techniques, and her lock-breaking abilities were one of the 4 ultimate beauties. However, there was still a 4th ultimate that had never been revealed before, which was the most frightening. Yuhua Mavis attacked. No matter what your plans are, the results will not change. You don't even know what kind of existence you're facing. As she spoke, green grass covered the golden stage, causing the sky to turn green. Dozens of giant green fists appeared and smashed towards invisible light. Lu Yin had the strength and defense to contend with Yuhua Mavis, but invisible light did not. However, he could predict her attacks and his domain was so powerful that it was rarely seen among his peers. Even the Shangqing and the others could not reach such a level. Invisible light's force field condensed to form a giant human figure that slapped towards Yuhua Mavis. This was not strength but rather the suppression of a domain. Yuhua Mavis' eyes flashed and the grass beneath her feet grew crazily, transforming into a giant palm that slapped upwards. The collision between a physical body and a domain seemed illusory, but it was actually a collision. Invisible light was an Enlighter, but Yuhua Mavis was also an Enlighter. The collision between the two caused the sky to tremble and the golden stage to tremble. Lu Yin had used various methods to challenge someone who was a realm above him, but the results were shocking. Invisible Light's battle against Yuhua Mavis was a head-on clash, and he had used his domain to meet Yuhua Mavis' strength. One had the strongest domain while the other had the strongest physical strength. Both sides had reached the pinnacle in certain aspects. Yuhua Mavis had not expected the 10 arbiters to be so difficult to deal with, and the grass beneath her feet grew once more, transforming into fists that smashed towards Invisible Light. Invisible Light's domain was like a storm that enveloped an area of 10,000 meters, forming a visible force field that isolated the fists. The scene was extremely shocking. Even the Shangqing, Qiu Shi, and the others were distracted by the battle, and they occasionally avoided the shockwaves from the clash of domains and physical strength. Outside the mountain and sea realm, Mu En sighed in admiration. It's rare for someone of the younger generation to be able to cultivate a domain to such an extent. He'll definitely improve in the future and he'll even surpass the Sirius stars. This child can enter the observation list. Not too far away, Yuenka sighed in amazement. This generation of youths is too rare. Their domains, physical strength, spiritual force, battle techniques, innate gifts, and secret techniques have all reached the pinnacle. There hasn't been a generation that's as strong as them since ancient times. The stars are bright and they'll definitely give birth to a progenitor. Let's leave that opportunity to these youths. There's no hope for you or me, an elder said helplessly. Haizid Shinwei spoke up. Old Mu, Lu Yin also has the qualifications to enter the observation list, right? Mu En smiled. Of course. He was already on the observation list the moment he defeated that brat from the Day-Night clan. No, he was on the observation list the moment he unified the Outerverse. The observation list doesn't just evaluate one's combat power, but also their planning, arrangements, and schemes. This child is very suitable. Haizid Shinwei was unhappy. What? Our Lu Yin didn't enter the observation list because of his strength, but because of his schemes? Moon could not help but laugh. Strength and scheming. Both. That's called boldness, Haizid Shinwei couldn't help but comment. Muan thought about it and then nodded. Yes, it's boldness. Since ancient times, no one has been able to reach his level of accomplishment. Haizid Shinwei was pleased with himself and he looked at Xia Meng. Little Meng, why aren't you saying anything? Relax, Xia Juyo has definitely entered the observation list. There aren't many people who can challenge the person who cultivates the ancestral qi of the three suns. Xia Meng replied, I know. Back in the mountain and sea realm, the lightless domain was magnificent, and Yuhua Mavis' fists were boundless and firm. The two of them clashed for a few dozen breaths of time, covering the sky and leaving many people dumbfounded. Chapter 1135. Those from the Neoverse who had participated in the Star Tower contest already knew how powerful the 10 Arbiters were, but they had not expected them to be so powerful that they could fight against Ascension Mavis. These 10 Arbiters of the Innerverse are too abnormal. How did they cultivate such a domain? Someone from the mountain and sea realm was shocked. Nearby, Mu Xing and the other two were shocked. Yaoji could not believe it. Was this really someone from the Innerverse? Hua Xiao bitterly said, I thought that Lu Yin was the strongest of the 10 Arbiters, but it seems like that might not be the case. This obscure is even more abnormal. It's rare to see someone with such a powerful domain. In another corner, Qing Guangshan and the others from the home of the gods stared blankly at the golden screen in the sky. They had not paid much attention to the 10 Arbiters of the Innerverse, which was why they had been chasing after Long He. But were all the 10 Arbiters so abnormal? Since Long He was as famous as this person, they should not be too far off. Now that they thought about it, they felt a lingering fear. Tai Yishan stared at the sky in shock. He was well aware of Ascension Mavis' strength, but Obscura was still able to reach such a level. It was unbelievable. They were not the only ones, as even Lu Yin was shocked. Obscura's domain surpassed the one he had displayed during his battle with Ziyi. It seemed like Ziyi had been hiding her strength and Obscura had done the same. This was the true power of his domain. It was no wonder that even Mr. Mu had praised him and said that he had the potential to become a progenitor. This was the power of a domain that could predict attacks. Such an intense clash affected the other battlefields, and even Shangqing and Qiushi looked in Ascension Mavis' direction. They were all the 5 astral children, and although they seemed to be on equal footing, there was still a so-called strongest in their hearts. There was no such thing as first place in literature and second place in martial arts. Regardless of the interests behind them, they would always determine who was the strongest. Only the strongest had the highest chance of becoming a progenitor. The intense clash shocked countless people, and it also allowed them to see the direction of their future development. There were many mysteries within the human body, and reaching the pinnacle of any one of them was equivalent to a metamorphosis. On the other side, Obscura's domain was still clashing with Ascension Mavis' power, and it did not look like it would end anytime soon. Xia Juyo took the opportunity to attack Shangqing, unleashing a netherforge palm that emitted a dark light. It appeared behind Shangqing's back. A stream of air appeared behind Shangqing, blocking the refined netherworld palm. He waved his hand and a stream of air crashed into Xia Juyo and another stream of air crashed into Lu Tianmu. Since they had appeared, he did not ignore them. 1 versus 2 was not a big deal to him. This was the first method of the Hall of Honor. Lu Tianmu's pride didn't allow her to team up with others, but the Shangqing's qi flow directly crashed into her. Either she withdrew from the fight for the golden stage or she had to fight. Lu Tianmu's gaze turned cold, and his star energy transformed into a sword that slashed out. The fourth slash disregarded space as it headed straight for Xianxia. Each of the 13 swords was extremely powerful. The fourth sword could ignore space and descend directly, even hitting the opponent. However, the Prime Clear's 3 Yang ancestral qi sealed the surrounding void. Even the fourth sword couldn't descend directly as it was shattered outside the void by a stream of air. Lu Tianmu lightly tapped his feet and faced the incoming airflow. The sixth sword, defensive sword force. In different directions, Xiajuyo kept throwing out refined netherworld palms. With the help of his echo talent, one palm strike was equivalent to 2 palms, and the second palm strike was still coming from an unknown direction. Even the Prime Clear had to constantly be on guard with one stream of air, and the momentum of the other stream of air was clearly reduced. It was 2 against 1, and although the situation was temporarily stabilized, it was still not enough to suppress the Prime Clear. The Prime Clear's 3 Yang ancestral qi was too mysterious, and neither Xia Juyo nor Lu Tianmu dared to collide with it. On the other side, when Sansi had also made a move against Qiu Shi. Compared to Lu Tianmu, he didn't care much about a 2-on-1 situation, even if his opponent was a woman. His principle was to think twice before acting, and Qiu Shi was worthy of being in a 2-on-1 situation. When Sansi's first move was the literary prison of 8. Of course, having fought with Qiu Shi before, he knew that he couldn't trap her. The Wen family didn't just have the literary prison, as they had other battle techniques as well. Combined with the literary prison and Star Sibyl, they were able to suppress Qiu Shi for a time. Qiu Shi seemed to be in the most danger out of the 3 battles. But Lu Yin knew that the Sirius Sect's secret technique, stellar transposition, was terrifying enough to instantly change the tides of battle. The golden stage represented the human domain's highest stage for the younger generation. On this stage, whoever stood at the end would be the strongest. Lu Yin was also envious, but he had been defeated by Heaven's Emergence Mavis, and he was no match for her as a cruiser unless he broke through to the Hunter realm. However, breaking through to the Hunter realm was not that easy. Just as everyone was staring blankly at the battle on the golden stage, a majestic fluctuation of star energy swept across the mountain and sea realm. The sky suddenly changed and an ethereal sound of a bell could be heard. Many people looked in the same direction where the sound of the bell had come from. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. What was that? Someone's breaking through to the Enlighter realm. The bell. Could it be the Spirit Palace? Lan Si cried out. Lu Yin had also guessed it, as out of all the people he knew, only the Spirit Palace had such an imposing and ethereal sound of a bell. The next moment, the magnificent Sky Palace appeared like a mirage that was imprinted in the air. Lu Yin sighed. It had to be the Spirit Palace, as that guy had actually broken through to the Enlighter realm at this time. It seemed that he also wanted to join the highest level of battle. 4 of the 10 arbiters had joined and Lu Yin himself had just been defeated. In addition to Lan Si and Li He who had been defeated by Lu Yin, there were 2 others who were not qualified to participate. The only one who had not appeared was Drunkard. Lu Yin's guess was correct, as Drunkard was currently sleeping and drifting along the ocean's current. She showed no signs of waking up, and no matter how intense the battle was, it would not affect her. Atop the golden stage, Heaven's Emergence Mavis looked in the direction of the Enlighter realm breakthrough from Ling Gong. She then looked at Invisible Light. You 10 arbiters are really surprising. Logically speaking, the Innerverse resources should not have been enough to nurture your strength. Did the Daoist sect ruins give you a chance to transform? Invisible Light's domain collided with the Green Fist and he smiled. The Neoverse has the inheritances of the 5 mountains and 5 seas, which is why you don't care about the Daoist sect ruins. Furthermore, the Daoist sect ruins face the 6th mainland, which you disdain to fight for. However, you don't know that there are opportunities there as well. Heaven's Emergence Mavis was curious. What opportunity did you obtain? Invisible Light's gaze was complicated, and he seemed to be speaking to Heaven's Emergence Mavis as well as himself. The 6th mainland does not value domains, but in ancient times, there was a person who was born in the 6th mainland. He was born with insufficient spiritual force and was unable to accept a powerful imprint. Even though he became an enlighter, an emissary, or even a world imprinter, he was still unable to accept a powerful imprint. He was ridiculed his entire life, and powerhouses at the same level as him looked down on him. The 6th mainland's Daoist sect did not even accept him, and everyone saw him as an anomaly. That person's name is Obscurus. I don't know if you've heard of him before. Heaven's Emergence Mavis was puzzled at first, but then she seemed to recall something and was astonished. During the ancient war he was able to hold on for an entire day against a half-ancestor with a power level of 1,000,000. He even allowed the 6th mainland to safely retreat from the trap that my 5th mainland had set up. In the end he was still able to escape? Invisible Light nodded and replied with a complicated expression. That person was a hero of the 6th mainland. Although he only had a power level of 1,000,000, he was able to rival the 6th mainland's imprint and was able to withstand the attacks of my 5th mainland's half-ancestor. However, after that incident his injuries were too severe and he went into seclusion. Even the 6th mainland could not find any traces of him. He has cultivated his domain to the pinnacle of a certain aspect. You received his inheritance? Heaven's Emergence Mavis was astonished. Invisible Light replied, I've already forgotten my real name. When I received his inheritance I changed my name to Obscurus. Although he was an enemy he was still my benefactor. Heaven's Emergence Mavis was astonished. Enemies only had different standpoints. They were both humans and he inherited your inheritance. From the 5th mainland's perspective, this is considered atonement for the ancient war. His inheritance is in the Daoist sect ruins? Invisible Light replied, That's right. Heaven's Emergence Mavis laughed. The Daoist sect ruins don't have much value in the Neoverse, and only 10 futons were left behind during the ancient war. Thus, this opportunity was given to the Innerverse and it seems that it has indeed helped some people. Unfortunately, if it's just Obscurus's inheritance then you're still not my opponent. Domains have their limits but my strength has no limits. She then clenched her fists and the giant green fists that had been bombarding the domain trembled at the same time. Below her Lu Yin's pupils shrank. Careful. He saw that the rune lines on the green fist had actually increased dramatically, and they were now nearly 50% stronger than before. What kind of concept was this? It was equivalent to a sudden increase in one's power level. The green fists ruthlessly smashed down. The first fist was unable to penetrate the domain and it was forcibly blocked by the domain. The second fist built on the foundation of the first and ruthlessly bombarded the domain. Invisible Light's chest felt heavy and blood leaked out from the corner of his mouth. The third fist, fourth fist, fifth fist, and so on. Under the bombardment of dozens of fists, the domain collapsed and a giant green fist smashed down from above Invisible Light's head. Invisible Light's entire body was smashed into the golden stage and he was unable to move. Everyone who saw this scene fell silent. This was the power of the Mavis family. On the other side, Xianxia's gaze swept over Yu Hua, and a trace of apprehension flashed through his eyes. Even though he had cultivated the universe's #1 technique, the 3 Yang ancestral qi, he was still horrified by Yu Hua's strength. The Mavis family's strength was rarely seen in the world, and the Treeheart family's descendants were different from ordinary Mavis clansmen. While the other Mavis clansmen's strength was limited, the Treeheart family's descendants were infinitely powerful. This so-called infinity did not mean that their strength was limitless. Instead, it meant that no one in the same generation as them had been able to measure the limits of the Treeheart family's strength since ancient times. Even if Xianxia used the 3 Yang ancestral qi to fight against Yu Hua's strength, he might not be able to measure this woman's limits. He might be able to defeat her with the 3 Yang ancestral qi, but he would not be able to measure her limits. This was the power of the Mavis family's Treeheart family's descendants. If the 3 Yang ancestral qi was an unshakable, unparalleled technique, then the Mavis Treeheart family's descendants possessed unshakable strength. They were both true pinnacles. Below, on the surface of the sea, Lu Yin was shocked. This woman's strength was so exaggerated that it was far greater than his own. Was this the Mavis family's Treeheart family's descendant? Chapter 1136. Obscurely was already very strong. He had revealed his true strength as an enlighter and had fought against the Ascension Mavis for so long. He was the person who had pushed the Ascension Mavis to its limit, but he still could not defeat the Ascension Mavis' abnormal strength. That woman had unparalleled strength, an extremely powerful defense, and an innate gift that was hidden enough to control people's hearts. This was one of the 5 astral children, an unshakable powerhouse, Feather Mavis. Starsibyl, who was cooperating with Wensansi to attack Qiushi, looked at obscurely and frowned. Was this still not enough? Obscurely was already strong enough, but she still could not shake Feather Mavis. After all, she was from the Innerverse and lacked a foundation. She was secretly furious. She had already said that the 10 arbiters would work together to defeat at least one of them and snatch the position of one of the 5 astral children. But now, it seemed like she could only place her hopes on Lu Tianmu, Wen Sanxi and Ling Gong, who might have broken through to the Enlighter realm. Where are you looking? Qiu Shi's voice traveled to her ears and Starsibyl's heart sank. Her eyes flickered and her expression changed. She immediately retreated, but it was too late. A pure white palm stretched out in front of her, accompanied by nearly 1,000 stars revolving around it. Sirius's palm. There was a bang and Starsibyl was swept away by the exploding stars from Sirius's palm. Her face turned pale and she retreated. Qiu Shi chased after her and a literary prison appeared around her. When Sanxi used his star energy to write in the void, which transformed into a cage that trapped Qiu Shi. Qiu Shi did not resist, and when Sanxi trapped her with 15 cages, her lips curled up. Revolving star, stellar shift. The next moment, Starsibyl appeared within the cage, having switched places with Qiu Shi. Qiu Shi appeared not far from Wen Sanxi, and nearly 1,000 stars revolved around her to form a sword of starlight. Sirius sword technique. With a whoosh, the sword chi tore through the void and slashed towards Wen Sanxi. Wen Sanxi knew that the secret technique of the Sirius sect was stellar transposition. However, even though he knew, he still couldn't react in time. Sirius' sword pierced his abdomen, causing fresh blood to splatter on the golden screen. Within the cage, Starsibyl's expression changed. She raised her hand and a round bead formed beneath Wen Sanxi's feet. Qiu Shi's Sirius sword technique was unleashed once again, and a round bead emitted a radiance that connected the heavens and the earth. It actually blocked Sirius sword technique and gave Wen Sanxi a chance to catch his breath. Qiu Shi flipped the sword formed from the stars and sliced apart the radiance. Close to 1,000 stars appeared once again as she leapt towards Wen Sanxi. Ascension Mavis had already finished her battle and she wanted to end it as soon as possible. Starsibyl raised her hand again, and another bead emitted a radiance that connected the heavens and the earth, blocking Qiu Shi's path. Qiu Shi slashed out with her sword, cutting off the light. Then another light followed, and then another light blocked Qiu Shi from all directions, giving Wen Sanxi a chance to catch his breath. Wen Sanxi stared at the round beads that were emitting radiance, and each bead actually blocked Qiu Shi's path. Qiu Shi gripped the sword formed from the stars tightly and swept it out, cutting off all the light. She then looked at Starsibyl with a cold gaze. The Starsibyl sect's abacus technique lives up to its reputation. Starsibyl stared at Qiu Shi. Sirius sect's stellar transposition and Sirius sword techniques live up to their reputation as well. When Sanxi waved his hand and released Starsibyl from the cage. He was panting heavily as he had almost been finished just now. She truly lived up to her reputation as one of the 5 astral children. She ignored speed, transformed the stars into swords and had unparalleled power. She even had the secret technique stellar transposition. This woman was just as unbeatable as Ascension Mavis. It had to be said that the Neoverse's 5 astral children were not wrong. There was no need to mention the prime clear lineage, as the ancestral chi of the 3 sons was already invincible. Even if Wen Sanxi fought 1 against 2, it would not matter. Even if the number of people surpassed the ancestral chi of the 3 sons, at the very least, Wen Sanxi would not be defeated. Ascension Mavis was simply unbeatable. Her strength was extraordinary and her defense was formidable. She also had the innate gift of the Mavis family that she had yet to display. Qiu Shi's Sirius secret techniques were able to counter almost everyone. Even Hidden Weep, who had been defeated, might not have been defeated if his opponent had been someone else other than Lu Yin. Lu Yin had only defeated him because of Ghost Monkey. Otherwise, this person would have at least remained undefeated. The weakest of the 3 was Tear Lady. With her innate gift, indefensible battle techniques, and the Hall of Honor's secret techniques, there were very few people in the same realm who could defeat her. If not for Xia Juyo, even Invisible or Wen Sanxi would have had a high chance of winning. The 5 astral children were placed in any of the previous Star Tower competitions, and they could easily become the 5 astral children. They could only blame the fact that there were too many geniuses in this competition. There had never been so many Enlighters in any of the 5 astral children's competitions. The competition for the Star Tower had reached its climax, and everyone's attention shifted from Ascension Mavis to Xianxia's and Qiushi's battles. Although it was 2 against 1, many people in the Neoverse were still confident in Xianxia and Qiushi's abilities. Everyone thought that Ascension Mavis's battle had ended, but with a cry of surprise, many people's attention was drawn to invisible light once more. He had actually stood up. Below the golden screen, Xiao He and Xiao Bai covered their mouths. They were all shocked that Lu Yin could still stand after taking that punch. Lan Si was shocked. Even with his physical body that had cultivated the overlaying stacks path, he might not have been able to stand up after taking that punch. Lu Yin was not surprised, as Invisible Light's rune lines had not weakened by much. Of course, he had definitely been injured, but something had happened in the instant that the punch had landed, causing him to not be able to withstand the full power of the punch. Ascension Mavis looked at Invisible Light. At the last moment, I gathered my force field and cancelled out most of the punch's power. You look miserable, but you're not seriously injured. Invisible Light stood up and patted his clothes. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth as he looked at Ascension Mavis with intense shock. It's rare for someone to be as strong as you. It's no wonder why the Mavis family can control the human domain's economy. The Treeheart's descendant must have been extremely powerful. Just the Mavis family alone is enough to topple half of the human domain. Ascension Mavis replied indifferently, "You think too highly of us. Since everyone thinks that you've lost, why don't you just lie there? Even if you stand up, you still won't have a chance of winning." Invisible Light smiled, but his teeth were stained with blood. "Let's try. Maybe I'll win." Ascension Mavis frowned and clenched her fists, causing the grass to grow wildly and transform into giant green fists. These green fists maintained the power that had just defeated Invisible Light and smashed down viciously. Invisible Light's eyes narrowed, and he suddenly raised his right hand. Black coffin. As soon as he spoke, Ascension Mavis's surroundings suddenly turned pitch black. It was as if space itself had been stripped away, trapping her within a black coffin. The giant green fists also disappeared at the same time. It was as if Ascension Mavis had been isolated. Next, the black coffin began to distort, and then countless black spikes protruded outwards, seemingly piercing through the black coffin and Ascension Mavis. In that instant, everyone fell silent as they stared blankly at the scene. Even Prime Clarity and the others stopped what they were doing and stared at the scene. Outside the mountain and sea realm, Mu En and the others cried out in alarm, "Secret technique!" Haizid Shinwei was astonished. What a familiar secret technique. I think I've seen it somewhere before. Xia Meng spoke in a low voice, "The 6th mainland's ancestor He." Haizid Shinwei remembered. That's right. Master said that the black coffin secret technique came from the 6th mainland's ancestor He, who died in battle. He was a progenitor. How could this kid know the 6th mainland's secret technique? Mu En said, "Ancestor He died in my 5th mainland's ancient war. He was killed by our 5th mainland's progenitor Qin. His corpse fell to the ground and there's no way to find it. This kid must have obtained it by chance." The black coffin secret technique. Master said that it's a very powerful secret technique, Haizid Shinwei praised. Everyone stared at the black coffin on the mountain and sea realm's golden stage. Just as its name implied, it was a black coffin. Even an idiot would know that it would not be pleasant to be inside. The worst possible outcome would be for Emergence Mavis to be torn apart by those black spikes. Invisible Light panted heavily as he stared at the black coffin. There was a rare look of confusion in his eyes, as he did not know if this attack would be able to defeat Emergence Mavis. Not long after, the black coffin cracked open and shattered into pieces, revealing Emergence Mavis. This Emergence Mavis was completely different from before. There were dozens of wounds of various sizes on her body, and there were even 1 or 2 that were so deep that her bones could be seen. Her face was cold and her eyes contained a boundless chill. She looked at Invisible Light and did not say a word. She simply raised her right hand, causing countless blades of grass to rapidly grow until they formed a giant palm that covered the sky. Invisible Light was helpless, as he could not even defeat the black coffin secret technique. Mavis was indeed powerful, and a force field converged above his head to form a giant figure that blocked the palm. At this moment, a figure quickly crossed the sea and charged towards the mountain. A white spear stabbed out, accompanied by the echoes of the primordial celestial palace's bell. The spear stabbed towards Emergence Mavis. It was Ling Gong. She had broken through to the Enlighter realm and had directly charged onto the golden stage to participate in the strongest battle. Emergence Mavis' expression was cold as her green palm pressed down, and the leaves on her body transformed into a fist that punched towards the spear. With a bang, a shockwave rippled out in all directions. The giant green palm was lifted up by the celestial palace, and images suddenly appeared within the palace. Each of the images held a spear as they stabbed towards the palm, instantly tearing it apart. Invisible light switch. Ling Gong's voice was cold. After being forced back by Emergence Mavis' punch, she charged out again. Her spear spun as her back illuminated the celestial palace, and she descended with a suppressive might. Emerald green flashed in Emergence Mavis' eyes, and just as she was about to try and control Ling Gong, a ghostly palm print appeared from the side and slapped the spear away. Xiajuyo had actually abandoned Xianxia and attacked Ling Gong instead. Ling Gong turned around and stabbed out with her spear once more. Ghostly light gathered in Xiajuyo's palm, and he slashed out with the Xia family's 3 styles of blade intent. With a hiss, the void split open and ghostly light and white light scattered in all directions. Ling Gong was forced back by this attack, and Xiajuyo's second attack descended. Ripples appeared in the celestial palace above Ling Gong's head, and the majestic sound of the bell prevented the second style of blade intent from approaching. Xiajuyo sneered and gripped his blade with both hands as he slashed out with the third style of blade intent. This was the first time that Xiajuyo had used all 3 styles of blade intent, and each strike was several times more powerful than the last. The might of the third style of blade intent shocked Ling Gong, and she dodged at the same time. The celestial palace was split in 2, and the blade light tore through the sky of the mountain and sea realm and extended into the distance. Even Ascension Mavis had to take this blade seriously. Thank you. The Mountain Breeze. Thank you, brothers, for your support. The next volume is about to be released. Thank you, brothers, for your support. Chapter 1137. The Xia clan had always been the head of the 7 courts. The 3 forms of blade intent had once been a silent weapon of an era. It was filled with dominance and sharpness. Unless one was unable to unleash the third strike, very few people would be able to take it head-on. Ling Gong looked at Xiajuyo solemnly. Dim Light's domain gradually recovered and he frowned at Xiajuyo. Weren't you challenging the prime clear? Xiajuyo glanced at Feather Mavis, and then his gaze swept across the other 2 battlefields. I suddenly realized that the situation isn't right. The competition between the 5 astral children originally had nothing to do with the Innerverse. According to normal circumstances, I'm already one of the 5 astral children, but now, it's as if the 10 arbiters of the Innerverse are challenging the 5 astral children. Many people heard this and subconsciously glanced at the battlefield on the golden stage. They found that this was indeed the case. One of the 10 arbiters, Lu Tianmu, challenged the prime clear lineage. When Sansi of the 10 arbiters had teamed up with Starsabil from the Innerverse to challenge Qiushi, he would never openly challenge Ascension Mavis. The Spirit Palace of the 10 arbiters participated in the battle. The 10 arbiters, they were all the 10 arbiters. The competition between the 5 prodigies of the stars originally had nothing to do with the Innerverse, but because of the 6th Mainland's invasion and the Starsabil sect's strong efforts, the Innerverse 10 arbiters had actually joined the competition. They were now competing on the highest stage with the Neoverse top disciples. In the end, there were 4 10 arbiters while the Neoverse also had 4. In a corner of the mountain and sea realm, someone exclaimed, I wouldn't have known if you hadn't mentioned it. The 10 arbiters of the Innerverse are a bit abnormal. 4 of them have actually reached that step. No amount of exclamations can represent our state of mind. We must defeat the Innerverse 10 arbiters. Otherwise, our Neoverse will truly lose face. We have to defeat the 10 arbiters. Even if the 10 arbiters lose, their names will still spread throughout the Neoverse. Everyone will know who they are. Outside of the mountain and sea realm, an elder was shocked. I didn't realize that the Innerverse 10 arbiters would be able to reach such a level. They're even on par with our Neoverse top disciples. Haizid Shinwei was shocked as well. Is this the reason why the Starsabil sect is trying so hard to include the Innerverse in the Star Tower contest? The 10 arbiters really didn't disappoint them. Mu En exclaimed, originally I didn't have high hopes for these 10 people. I just wanted them to participate, but I didn't expect them to win half the battle. Xia Meng's eyes narrowed. This was a battle between the Neoverse and the Innerverse, and if one were to reassess the situation, then the 7 courts had already lost based on the division of powers. If not for Xia Juyo, then the 7 courts would not even have a single person standing on the highest stage, and Burial Garden would have lost as well. The 3 dark magnates had really declined. On the other hand, the Innerverse had risen to prominence, and there was still one more person. She looked at Lu Yin. This kid had relied on a dozen years of cultivation to reach his current level, and he had even been able to fight against Yuanhua Mavis as a cruiser. Once he broke through to the Hunter realm or even the Enlighter realm, it would be hard to say what his future would be like. The situation of the universe had changed. The 7 courts also needed to change, or they would be eliminated sooner or later. Xia Juyo's words made the situation on the golden stage clear. It was a battle between the 10 arbiters of the Innerverse and the 5 children of the stars of the Neoverse. Even though Lu Yin wanted to see the true power of the 3 ancestral qi, his 9 clones technique was still unable to reach the highest level of power. Under such circumstances, he would be at a disadvantage if he fought against the 3 ancestral qi. Furthermore, he represented the Xia family of the Neoverse, so he naturally could not allow the Innerverse to interfere in the battle between the 5 children of the stars. The 10 arbiters were already strong enough, and they would not be able to suppress them if they advanced any further. From the Neoverse perspective, they needed to suppress the Innerverse, regardless of whether it was the older generation or the younger generation. Among the older generation of the Innerverse, there were not many that the Neoverse cared about. The Sword Sect, the Day-Night Clan, the Beast Tamers Flow Zone, the Lingling Clan, and so on. There were only a dozen or so of them, and the most powerful of them all was at Night King Dezhang's level. However, such a level was not enough to be considered the top in the Neoverse. The younger generation also needed to suppress the Innerverse, so there should not be any accidents. The 10 arbiters' current accomplishments were already beyond expectations, but that was the extent of their accomplishments. Xia Juyo against Ling Gong, Yuanhua Mavis against Obscured Light, Shangqing against Lu Tianmu, and Qiu Shi against Xianxia and Starsabel. This was the battle on the highest stage. Even though the Innerverse had high hopes for the 10 arbiters, the situation was not optimistic. Obscured Light's secret technique, Black Coffin, had injured Yuanhua Mavis, but it recovered very quickly. Now that Obscured Light was on guard against Black Coffin, it would not be so easy to attack again. Obscured Light was immediately suppressed by Yuanhua Mavis. Ling Gong was similarly suppressed by Xia Juyo. Whether it was the 3 forms of blade intent or the nether refining palm, they were all very troublesome to deal with. There was no need to mention Shangqing. The ancestral qi of the 3 sons suppressed Lu Tianmu from start to finish, and even Lu Tianmu's 13 swords could not contend against Shangqing. Below the golden stage, Lu Yin's heart sank. Based on the current situation, the 10 arbiters were definitely going to lose. The 5 scions of the stars were still from the Neoverse, and Lu Yin wanted to participate. However, the 10 arbiters all had their own dignity, and they would not allow outsiders to interfere. Although when Xianxia had borrowed Starsabel's strength, it might have been because of their previous agreement that Lu Yin's interference would have the opposite effect. Lu Yin could not help but look at Lan Si. If Lan Si had broken through to the Enlighter realm, then he would have been able to interfere. His emptiness palm was not weak, but unfortunately this guy had no intention of breaking through. Where had Drunkard gone? Lu Yin was not the only one who could see that. Everyone could see that the 10 arbiters were about to lose. While dodging Qiu Shi's serious technique, Starsabel's gaze swept across the golden stage. She flicked her finger lightly, and although she was not injured, a trace of blood seeped out of the corner of her mouth. She had overdrawn her energy. Qiu Shi noticed this and frowned. Serious sword technique slashed towards Starsabel. When Xianxia pushed serious sword technique aside, curious as to what Starsabel was trying to do. Off in the distance, Ling Gong was within the Heaven Palace, and the mighty sound of a bell pressed down on Xia Juyo. Xia Juyo raised his hand and unleashed 3 forms of blade intent in succession. The third strike was horrifying. At this moment, beams of light appeared on the ground, connecting the heavens and the earth. The first beam of light deflected the third form of blade intent by a fraction, and the second beam also deflected it by a fraction. A total of 10 beams followed, and the final result was that the third form of blade intent was completely deflected and swept past the Heaven Palace. Ling Gong frowned and looked in Starsabil's direction. Xiaojio turned around and looked as well. What had just happened was Starsabil's technique. She had used divination to predict the trajectory of the blade intense attack and deflect it. It was not just Ling Gong. Lu Tianmu had also received Starsabil's help and used divination to interfere with the Three Suns' ancestral Chi's attack. Starsabil could not help them attack, but she could help them predict their opponent's attacks and interfere with them. Starsabil had single-handedly interfered with the entire battle in an attempt to control the overall situation and turn the 10 arbiters' defeat into victory. Xianxia glanced at Starsabil and said, "Ignorant." The second beam of Three Suns' ancestral Qi disappeared and reappeared behind Lu Tianmu. "Defend against the sword." Lu Tianmu barked as he blocked the first beam of Three Suns' ancestral Qi with his sword. However, he could not block the second. His shoulder was struck by the ancestral Qi and he was sent flying 1,000 meters away. The force of the impact nearly caused his organs to collapse, and he could not help but spit out blood. Xianxia stood motionless in his original spot like a god. The two beams of Three Suns' ancestral Qi were enough to suppress everything. Seeing the two beams of Three Suns' ancestral Qi rush over again, Lu Tianmu gripped the hilt of his sword and raised it to point at Xianxia. With a flip of his sword, a beam of sword light disappeared. Xianxia's pupils shrank and he immediately retreated. At the same time, the Three Suns' ancestral Qi blocked in front of him. The sword light pierced through the ancestral Qi and forced Xianxia to retreat more than 10 steps. This was the first time that Lu Tianmu had forced Xianxia to retreat. 11th sword, Sword Splitter. Lu Tianmu did not want to be repelled as he had no intention of dodging the incoming beams of Three Suns' ancestral Qi. Beams of light appeared on the ground, connecting the sky to the earth. Starsabil shouted from afar, "Move aside." Lu Tianmu's expression was cold. The 13 swords had been invincible since ancient times, and they did not need the help of others. Rather than having others help them escape, it was better to trade injuries for injuries. The Three Suns' ancestral Qi was powerful, but Lu Tianmu did not believe that Xianxia's defenses were as powerful. Just as the two beams of Three Suns' ancestral Qi were about to hit her, Lu Tianmu's sword, which had been gradually lowering, suddenly slashed out horizontally. No one had expected her to use the 13 swords in a row, and each of the 13 swords was earth-shattering. Furthermore, she had just used the 11th sword and the next one was the 12th sword, profound meaning. The 11th sword, Sword Splitter, had once been crippled by Quiet Weep. Even though Lu Yin had used the secret art of plan to dodge it, he had only been able to avoid it due to the warning signs in his heart. Half of it was a secret technique and the other half was luck. Xianxia had relied on the Three Suns' ancestral Qi to block the 11th sword, but he had not been able to block the 12th sword. As the sword light flashed, blood splattered everywhere. Xianxia's eyes changed and his vision turned red. He had been injured. This was the first time Xianxia had been injured since he had stepped into the mountain and sea realm. No matter who he had faced before, not even Ku Lei and the others, they had not been able to injure him. They had not even been able to make him retreat half a step. But now he had been injured by Lu Tianmu's 12th sword. The sword Sex 13 swords was the strongest sword technique in the human domain, and Lu Tianmu had used the 12th sword to injure Xianxia. At that moment everyone looked over. After Lu Tianmu had used the 12th sword, his body had been struck by two beams of Three Suns' ancestral Qi. His body had been severely injured and he fell to the ground with a pale face. He could not even hold on to the sword formed from star energy and it vanished. Xianxia lowered his head. His shoulders had been slashed horizontally by a sword, and there were wounds on them that still contained sword Qi. The injury wasn't serious. It looked like a big scar but it didn't affect him. Xianxia looked at Lu Tianmu who had fallen to the ground and was shocked. "I never thought that someone would be able to injure me in this Star Tower contest." Three Suns' ancestral Qi revolved around his body as he looked at Lu Tianmu seriously. "You have the qualifications to become one of the 5 astral children, but unfortunately, you don't have the life." Lu Tianmu collapsed to the ground and stared blankly at the sky. Did he not have the life? If he had comprehended the 13th sword, then the outcome would have been different. In the distance, Starsabil's heart sank. Lu Tianmu had been defeated. Of the 10 arbiters, she had favored Lu Tianmu the most. His reputation as the invincible 13 swords had given her a lot of hope, and the fact that he had injured Xianxia proved that Lu Tianmu had not disappointed her. Unfortunately, the 12th sword was not enough to defeat Xianxia, and Lu Tianmu himself had fallen. As she thought about this, she looked at the other side of the battlefield and her expression changed. Invisible light was facing Xia Juyo's Ling Palace. He raised his hand and pressed it down. Ling Palace's surroundings turned black, and it sealed her in like a coffin. Secret technique: black coffin. Many people were stunned by this scene as invisible light had actually attacked Ling Palace. Thank you for your support, brothers. The next chapter is about to set sail, and the Supreme Astral Tournament is about to begin. With my feet in the heavens, I will be supreme. Invincible supreme.